This is Summoning Insight. Is it? Actually, it's me and Yamato. So it is Summoning Insight because, spoiler, as I mentioned on that last episode, listen, when you've got a name like that, which, by the way, did come up with myself, just going to put that out there, has endured. It's not like back in the day where everything else was like summoners in and like the difference is those were cheesy. This has endured. It's become its own thing. But obviously, it was iconically Monte Cristo and me, wasn't it? That was the duo. But we wanted to keep the spirit of Summoning Insight going. And then also, I'll let everyone know, it's a straight fire name and people see the name and they click the name. And so obviously the brand is worth continuing on, isn't it? So Yamato, as we explained on the past episode, you can go check that out. Or you can watch the most recent Four Horsemen episode where we actually talk about the state of LFN and Monty stepping away and some of those other things and what the plans are. For example, he will still do a lot of industry topics, even though I said on the last episode, one of the reasons to pick Yamato is not only does he follow all the regions, which by the way, not many people do, but also he is someone who can address a little bit about industry things and has his own takes. But I didn't want it to be like, essentially, people know every time Riot fucks up, it's like, right, set the timer, the next half an hour, it's just me and Monty dry roasting them continuously while calling them motherfuckers and saying how they're all idiots. So the difference is, not everyone can do that. Not just physically, just you have to realize some people might not want to do that. So what I wanted is, Yamato can touch on some of those topics. We'll still bring them up on the show, but to go for the full roast session, that can just go to the Four Horsemen if it's something that's necessary. And as I said, in theory, that also means you get to find out what Richard Lewis thinks about it. Spoiler, he's going to be even more negative about Riot. So there you go. It's going to be a murderer's row for Riot on that one. So, okay, Yamato, we did say as well, like, this is our style, mate. We're not coming in like, fucking pussies. Like, oh, just gently dip my toe in the pool. Is it warm? Can I come in yet? If anything, I'm just telling you, do a fucking barrel roll into this bitch. You're just coming off the top board, mate. Because on episode 1, we're going to cover the whole world. So I'm not too ambitious or anything. Don't worry, guys. We're going to start out like this. You're going to see Yamato, obviously, from the other streams anyway. He follows all the regions. Yeah, so you ready? You ready to get into this and do the whole thing, mate?
Bro, I'm so ready, bro. I'm happy that we carry on the Summoning Insight name. I just hope it doesn't turn out to be like a Ghostbusters remake, or like an Oceans remake, or like a Lion King remake. I hope it's not going to be one of those, bro. I'm going to try to honor the name with you, Thorin. So let's rock and roll, man. Where do you want to go first?
Yeah, here's the thing. I actually think since we've just been watching, like if you don't know, we let Yamato, instead of having a set time, it's a bit like when I used to do the Best Damn League show live with Dom. We let him finish the LPL and the LCK games. So why don't we start with one of these regions? Like maybe we start with the LPL, right? LPL is really fun to discuss. So then we'll work our way. Maybe we'll do LEC as the dessert in this analogy. But before that, since this is a fresh episode of Summoning Insight with a brand new guest, and in many ways, this is so hackney, but we're saying hello to him. Why not Hello Fresh, which is the sponsor I'm now seamlessly going to integrate? Because here's the thing about variety is the spice of life. And no, I'm not talking about the Fearless Draft. I'm talking about HelloFresh. So keep your food intake fun and varied with HelloFresh, like a rogue lineup. Never quite know what's going to be in there, do you? Could be all sorts of things. And who knows how it'll turn out? That's half the battle, isn't it? So they will send you the ingredients for us up to a selection of up to 50 wholesome, hassle-free meals each week. It's just delivered to your door. You don't have to go anywhere. They also now, by the way, have their own ready-made meals. This isn't just you get the ingredients, you prep them. They have ready-made meals that you can have in your fridge where basically just 3 minutes and it can just be on your fork and then in your mouth. So you don't have to keep telling me about Karmine Corp. You can just put something delicious in there and exactly. So no cooking required even necessarily from HelloFresh if you don't feel like it. Bit like G2, didn't feel like cooking this week. You know what? Difference is it took them 20 minutes to get sent home. This just take you 3 minutes to be nice and full and satisfied. So they also have prep and bake meals, which only need 5 minutes of prep, and then you just put it in the oven, basically. So they've actually also tailored it, so it isn't just the original concept of just the ingredients and you make it all yourself. They've got like different stages to it as well. By the way, I have previously literally used this service myself long before they sponsored us as just a personal private customer. I have paid for these services because, I'm actually not someone who's like a mega cook. It's not really like one of my strengths. I will say though, and I actually have always credited this type of service is actually what made me get a little bit into cooking though, because the problem with cooking is it's so daunting, because even though you'll find online recipes, the reason why grandma always cooks it better than you isn't just that she cooks it with love, which certainly she does, I would hope, if you have someone with a nice background, but also she knows, like when she says that, and then a handful of this, you don't know what the handful means though, mate. Like that's the secret, is knowing like a little bit more, a little bit less. Then she even knows like what your particular tastes are. One of the mega things about this service I've found is they send you all the ingredients and they give you just the right amount of each. And also, what you quickly learn about a bunch of dishes you already think you know is actually you're just doing the basic version of that with like 4 ingredients. They'll give you like 2 or 3 extra little, a sauce, a spice, or something here that you wouldn't think to add. Maybe that's like the pro level, but adding that is really what brings out the flavors, what makes it taste really good. And even though I'm not a good cook, I have to say, first of all, it's fairly idiot-proof. You just follow the instructions. And I have even found, even when I semi-fucked up and it didn't look like what it was supposed to on the picture, or I didn't get the timing perfect, because they're adding in such a great like flavor balance, it actually pretty much always tasted better than I expected, or just actually pretty good. I think I've had very few where I was like, either I messed it up or it just tasted bad. So I have to say, I think it's a mad underrated service. So get up to 10 free meals and a high protein free item for life at HelloFresh.com/LFN10FM. So it's LFN10FM. 1 item per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/LFN10FM. Thank you to HelloFresh, and thank you to anyone who chooses to use that service and support us. Again, I actually just recommend it as a service. It's actually legit. I've used it myself in the past. Right, should we get into it, Yamato? Should we go straight to the LPL? Speaking of cooking, the craziest region in the history of League of Legends for cooking is the LPL, mate. And this is the region where the first time I heard that they're going to do worldwide Fearless Draft, I was like, oh lordy, what is that LPL going to be like? And even worse, Yamato, it's not just a Fearless Draft. We're doing Fearless Draft and Atakan. We're just adding these elements to the Fearless Draft. That's like just putting fuel on a fire and just fucking lighting a match, like that's good. That's going to be bonkers. So give me the initial thoughts before we get into specific teams. What do you think so far of the implementation of things like Atakan, Fearless Draft? What are your initial thoughts?
I do think that teams that are just mechanically good get away with so much more because the progression of the game is a lot, like it just doesn't require any brain. So when you have like these teams, like LGD is a very, very good example where they have like a bunch of players coming out of LDL, new names. One of the guys called XQW, you have YCX, and you just see them like drifting in terms of how they play mechanically. And in previous years, that got you only so far. You would see this team do something good, something beautiful, and it's like, they will eventually lose because like the maneuvering of the waves and how you have to progress the map is very specific. But now it's just very, very streamlined. Get your objectives, be ready to fight, and just mechanically test yourself. So we get to see kind of a deeper layer to players that maybe in other cases wouldn't offer more. And I think that's true for like LPL as a whole. Like a lot of mechanical demons are definitely standing out more so than ever before.
By the way, even though later we will talk about LEC, I actually did think, shout out to Kazi, because he went from just having that really weird social media style where it was all about like him writing fan fictions about him having homoerotic relations with fucking humanoids. I never really got that was. You know what? Not judging you. You do you, mate. I never vibed with that. He's actually now gotten a really good sarcastic Twitter game though, because I did think that comment he made almost made me laugh out loud, where he was like, how do we get the other Atakan? Because obviously in his team, it's Lunatics and Hylissang, isn't it? So the joke is they don't even get that one. Like that in itself was fucking hilarious, because what people don't realize is, I actually made this point on the last episode, I do feel like COS League is like vaguely similar to how it's always been. You've got the Baron and you've got the things, you've got the tower. I do think people in history just look at teams and act like every year the game's the same. But just like I said, at Worlds, actually the underrated narrative is how T1 were the team that emphasized the grobs. Actually, there were other teams that gave that up, and I tell you what, T1 had a very unique style of doing it. I feel like that's another thing people have to look at with the Atakan thing. It's not just what roster you've got and is it a good team, a good player. This is going to be like whoever like sees us on how to use these objectives in the game, it's clearly going to give you an edge in the game. Like pretty swear, we were just watching before we went live that Freaks versus the DRX series. Like that's an example of how not to use the fucking Atakan. I don't even know what they were doing there, man. I thought the game should have been over. We should have been live like 20 minutes ago, but for whatever reason, they just gave it up. So it's clearly going to be like a big game-changing mechanic, right?
100%. I think that like the main thing is just like the map shape is very unique there. It's like in terms of how teams control the tri-bush, like on both sides is very unique. And at the same time, knowing that it can spawn on 2 sides is kind of random in terms of like if you have to enter through the tri-bush side, it does seem a lot more difficult. And now we're trying to figure out like which kind of arcs you need to create in order to collapse on the Atakan, and the walls that also kind of put you in a position where you are in fog of war. the additional detail that is so strange about Atakan is that first it does a shit ton of damage, it kind of murders you, reduces your MR and armor way more than Nashor, and at the same time you can pull it around. Like Atakan likes to move, he gets his cardio in, like you could just pull him and he just disappears for like a solid 15 seconds, way further than the Rift Herald. So it's like in terms of playing the position, it's definitely something that teams are figuring out. Like I think G2 is a great example of like a team that just did it very, very bad and like lost 2 games straight up off of it. And then additionally, it's like in terms of using Atakan, what I've seen the better teams do is that they kind of wait with Atakan to make it kind of cross over into the window of Nashor. It's like when you take the Nash, like the Atakan at 20 minutes, it doesn't seem to be as powerful, because then you see these awkward situations like in this DRX game. Even though Nash was indeed alive, they just tried to like push, and then it's like, oh guys, I guess we should fight. So they just like try and like right click the enemy team, walk into them. It just looks so damn stupid. So we've seen both sides of it, but I guess over time teams will eventually figure it out. But I think the standout is post 23, post 24, people just use it to get the Nashor, and then they just kind of make sure that all waves are pushed, so there's no like trades of side. I think that's like the crucial detail, because if you can push all 3 lanes and the enemy needs to kind of send 2 people, 3 people to stop you, that's where you get the value in terms of like the turret pushes. So I think that's probably the best use case for Atakan so far that I've seen.
I will say, I'm not someone, by the way, who's like averse to change and adding new things and making the game different or varied or harder. But my problem always is this, is obviously if you add or remove or change something, I want it to be a net positive change. I want it to improve the game. I want it to make watching the game better, studying the game better, like excellent like stories to matches, why you win's not random, etc. One thing I do worry about a little bit is what you said, is I keep getting worried that the general trend in League of Legends, ever since they went to that dragon meta, where the dragon isn't just gold, etc., or above, it's like you get the specific elemental dragons, etc. Ever since they went to that, it does seem like the trend in general is they're trying to like simplify macro, because I feel like the main thing they were concerned with is, it is true, the number one reason why Koreans were almost unbeatable back in the day, in your day when you were in the Vitalities, etc., was absolutely that like, it didn't even matter if you had the same hands, they would just have way better macro at the end of the game than you. And I always said, unfortunately, when you got to that dragon meta, it did become like Fisher Price, like macro. It's just like, right, press this button, like, Elmo, hey, it's my birthday. It's like, no, before that you had to construct the song yourself and the melody and the music, you know, like you didn't just push a button like, push Baron, then push Dragon. No, leave that Dragon. No, we're going to go for this Baron, get the Herald now. It became a little bit simpler. So I'm always worried if it looks like you simplify it, because actually one of the things I always appreciated, I mean, I'll give you an obvious example. Actually, the main thing I thought G2 had with Mickey X, yeah, he clearly had some issues as a support and he would sometimes fuck up with his hands. But tell you what, that guy would make like one really smart macro move, like every series it felt like, and that was actually pretty OP to have. It could rescue you sometimes or get you back into a game. So one of the only concerns I have is I don't want the game to become too obvious as to how you play it and how you win, because I actually always thought, I mean, to give an example, I won't say who, but behind the scenes, there are some really good players who are still top players or still in the scene now, who, if you ask them ever since that Dragon meta came in, they do tell you like, oh, I do feel like the game got dumbed down and like certain things, like, put it this way, this isn't one of them, but if I was to ask your boy Nuke Duck, you used to coach him back in the day, this guy lived in a fucking side lane. His whole strength was, if you didn't understand how side lanes work and the strength of his champion and what pressure he's going to put, you are going to lose the game. And even worse, that way of losing the game is really infuriating to an opponent. You feel like a moron when you don't know, when do I go? If we go now, fuck, you sent too many, and that gives you the chance to end us. Like, that was actually, you had a lot of strategy in the game back then. There was a lot of ways to play the game. The problem was, yeah, you can still side lane, but you're always doing it still to come back to an objective, to come back to the Baron, come back to the thing, whatever. Do you have concerns about that at all?
I do think definitely with like the addition of Atakan, because like last year we saw the evolution of let's call it like Caps macro, in terms of like in the past, players would always like perceive like unknown threats as, oh, I shouldn't die, I shouldn't pressure. But now I think that a lot more players are doing real-time like estimations and calculations in terms of what they need to invest to actually push you off waves. It's like I think Caps is probably like the player that has inspired the most people in the West, where like he did these things on Tristana where you could estimate, like he could 1v2, he could play, and he would always like push sides very, very deep with very limited information, but understand his champion's relation to everybody else's, where a lot of mid laners would be like, oh, they're missed, they're fogging into my side, I'm going to back up. And I think that part of the game evolved last year specifically, but now in 2025, like with Atakan, the games are just so damn fast. And it's like the average game time, I think, has gone down by plenty. It's just you're so incentivized to group because these objectives just swing the game way too hard. Whether it's like giving 6 groups to one team or like even above 4 plus, it just it incentivizes you so harshly to just be there at the count the same thing, Nash the same thing, and that definitely like removes the aspect of the setup. Sure, there's like elements to gain in terms of like position to be first on objective because you maintain control over side, which I think is there. But I do think from Riot's side, I guess they don't want to be in a scenario where fights are like predetermined by things that are just invisible to the average viewer. Like we had this discussion last time, right, when we were talking with Monty, where T1, like before they changed like the map in terms of how that wall is. It's like everything is just about that banana bush, control it and you can fight. Before that, it was like T1 created these like networks of like how they connected and pushed people out. And that's how they won their first world championship with that roster 2023. And then they changed it and all of a sudden fighting just became so streamlined and also became more common, which I think from a viewer's perspective, I get it. But I know from our side, it's like we want to see the chess game. Like I appreciate the chess game. It's like I get excited when it's like, oh, look, he stole this wave. And my viewers are like, what the fuck is he talking about? Like nothing happened. It's like he stole a wave and changed the whole game, you know?
Sure. Right, okay, let's get into some teams then. Look, obviously, we'll just start to establish for the fans what this show's going to be like. If IG had won, we would now do a 20-minute IG Glaze session. Unfortunately, they not only didn't win, they looked really dodgy, and I'm really scared, Yamato, because here's the thing. You know that fucking classic poster of the like flying, so I want to believe. That's me with this team, mate. I so want to believe that this team can do everything, because as I said on the past episode, IG used to just be hands, and then actually jungle and support was where you were like, bro, they're even going to have anything legit from this? Surely they just win from hands. In theory, now they've also got really established jungle and support and players who could be really good. So on paper, roster looks fucking great. The only real obvious concern is people wonder how will the Shy do and will he int and will he allow them to get their macro off and stuff. The problem is, not only did they lose their first series, but also, you know what? I'm just honest, Yamato. I have massive respect for Doinby's game, but he's one of those people who it's really frustrating because all my favorite players just get beaten by this guy because he's just the fucking mega mind, isn't he? He's just like a genius at League of Legends. I don't know. Every team he's on just starts to take his personality and his sort of style, and they just all become like interesting macro teams, and they play out the game differently. I mean, he's only been back for like 5 minutes, and already he's already pissing all over my dreams for IG. What did you think of this series?
Honestly, like what Doiby did, I really didn't think it was fucking possible, man. I really thought like his hiatus, he does like this whole stream persona. He was basically like fucking XQC overseas, you know, in terms of how he shouts and screams. And he just comes back and like performs out of his damn mind. It was like the first game, like on Victor, Rookie kind of outplayed him, but it just didn't really matter in the end because like his Rise performance, Lee Sin performance, well, what he was doing in that game, he was just running around like Pepsi Man. I don't know if you played that game growing up, you know, like on that Rise on the Flash Ghost. Like he was like, it was also like a difficult Rise game to execute, but all the memes just remained true. And like on the flip side though, like IG was driving me nuts, man. Like IG, I have to say, like as it kind of hit me, you know, I was like Gala and Rookie on the same team. These are like the two most cursed players of all time. Like maybe are they gonna cancel each other out, or is it going to be amplified? And I saw some amplification there because what Mako did, I don't know, like Lulu, I don't know how many times the fight started with him just getting Viego W'd on the Lulu. JJ also lost his mind a couple of times. Bad flashes, bad team fighting, and don't get me started on the Shy. Like the Shy with this Jax build, and there's Jax with, like his Karma. Like what was that? Archangel Randall's Omen. He finds a way. It's like we all know how dirty this man can get, but somehow he manages to surprise us all. Karma with Archangel Staff Randall's Omen. I'm mind blown. I just can't imagine the conversation in the back room. It's like they look over. It's like, what did you expect? Is that what he says? What did you expect? I am the Shy. And then the review is over. He just walks out the room.
But this way, luckily, because the champion Ambessa was in that series, I can say that absolutely, when the Shy plays like that, he deserves to have her ultimate done to him. Public execution. Like, that was a public execution series to Shy. The thing is, Yamato, what tilts me about the Shy is, obviously he's always had these classic, like, I've always said, I've never seen a player whose peak is as high as it, but then also has the craziest lows ever. Like, if you think of the greatest top laners of all time, they tend to have actually a very good floor to their game. Like, if you pick like Smeb or even Zeus, they don't tend to have that many games where they just like turn the brain off and in the whole game. They either play like an all right game or they play awesome. The problem with the Shy is this is exactly the sort of game where it's like, bro, we're never beating the allegations if this guy does these games. Like, they're never going to believe you were the GOAT, mate, if you play like this. Because I agree, like there was some fucking criminal games in this series from him. He's got to get his shit together because now there's no excuse now. Here's the other problem I have. In some of the past lineups he was in, maybe every player wasn't great. So you say, hey, he could be a win condition. Here's the key thing for me. He has to be not a losing condition, Yamato. I don't need him to be the Shy from 2018 every game now. I just need the odd game like that. But we've got it. As we're saying, Gala and Rookie, two of the most consistent players. They're both really good meta players. Like, you don't have to be the Shy every game, bro. And definitely, please don't be the bad Shy every game. Like, don't risk it that much because I agree with you. Like, the support in the jungle, I give them a break. They're brand new to the team. They're working with each other. Who knows what the shot calling was in past teams? Maybe each of them decided what was done. Who knows? But in this team, the Shy is definitely not beating the allegations so far, mate. It's bad. It's bad.
It's so bad. I don't know. I just imagine this personality to be like, I know you know the lore buff, but he's just like Draven incarnate, you know. It's just wants fucking attention, you know. He just stands there in the arena as people shout his name. Like, the more people in the arena, the better he plays. Because even like the last time in the Weibo run, like he had some dirty games. It's like that famous Gragas combo he did, right? And like Weibo just got him over the finish line because they like got in way in summer and he was performing super hard. Zhao, who had like one of the best like individual performances too, Light also super solid, crisp, better than the than before. And then when it came to the World Championship, suddenly the Shy is like, damn, what are you doing to my boy Bin with your Graves and your counter picks, and you have the guts to just play Quinn like this? It's like, oh, I think he just loves the attention. It's just like kind of waking up and playing these LPL matches. It's like, it's just kind of fucking whatever. It's like, I think it just seems, from outside, he just seems to be the most uncoachable player ever. Because I think it's like, in the state of mind he's in, you just kind of have to let him be and just drag him over the finish line and just hope that like stars align on the day that it matters the most. Because this NIP series was dirty, man. Like on the flip side, though,
go on.
like NIP, like the support cast, because I was very skeptical about this team.
Absolutely.
I thought Leave had very bad games and good games on EDG, like in the most recent time, like after the benching with the whole drama with JJ like flaming on like.
Oh, he never came back the same player he was in that spring split when everyone was hyping him. He was more up and down for sure,
And he definitely got caught a lot, but mechanically is definitely there. I think the two players that stood out is just Shanji and PP God. Like, these guys played super good. Shanji was way better. I was concerned about Shanji from last year because it did feel like now that the Kisante kind of Rumble thing is like public, like everyone's in the loop about how strong these champions are. I thought that he kind of lost his magic, kind of tried to like refine that with like Nasus picks and so forth. But he played the standard shit. Like, the Relic game was wonderful. I think as a kind of these roles around Doinby, it does look that this team has a lot more potential than I expected, because a lot of those names I just kind of sold them out after the previous year. So exciting for NIP, but IG, man, I don't know where we're going from here.
Here's the problem. That's where it gets awkward in the conversation, because again, if we were going to do a Glaze session, well, two problems I have to bring up. One, not only did Rookie have some sus games, like, by the way, the Azir was not it for Rookie. I'm sorry, it just wasn't. But even worse, Yamato, if like me, and I know you are, you were the guy who was doing like the Rookie apologist, like Defense League last year, where you were like, no, he's still good. Like, give him a chance. Look him on the Zeri. Look at this. Look, all you were doing, I'm sure you did the same thing as me, was, look, he has to play with fucking Shanji and Aki. They're not even good. They're on fucking nip, and they're just being what are we supposed to say now? That's pretty bad. That's a bummer, isn't it?
It's over, bro. It's like the other team in the group, like FPX looks disastrous, but RNG, Milky Way played good. They could pick up a victory if IG offer it. It's like IG in the current form against RNG, like, that's an exciting series that definitely can go either way if that's what fucking the Shy is offering. Is this Milky Way, I think, had a fantastic series. I think FPX should be like free loot in this group, but considering like only two groups go out and then it's a long ass vacation, it gets dangerous very fast in the LPL because it's just a single round robin.
Yeah, yeah. If people forget, that is also the key difference for this first split. It's not the LPL. First of all, the LPL changed last year anyway to be the groups into the groups, but it's not the old LPL where you just play like 15 best of threes or whatever. So you have, in that scenario, this is another thing I actually think for real, Yamato. LPL players are going to have to update how they play the game in the same way as the LEC players did when you went from being the giant 9-week split to, if you don't get through these BO, like the 3 games at the beginning, you just cooked basically. Like you can't, the problem here is, the old LPL format was genius in the sense that it allowed people to fuck around in draft on game 1, but then win the other 2. It allowed people to do stuff like lose a bunch of games early, but then as long as you cook in the middle of the split, you can go back. I'm with you. Essentially, people don't realize, if they just fuck up against RNG, it's just over for split 1. Like in 3 weeks, IG could already be done until the spring split. That requires a different sort. I feel like teams and coaches have to really change how they approach the games. You can't experiment and gamble as much, I feel like.
No, 100%. I think like thinking back to like previous LPL seasons, I don't know how many times a team makes like a miraculous run through the gauntlet after being like very, very sloppy. Like Weibo is an example, because they started out with Tarzan last year and it looked very, very sloppy in the beginning. They tried to incorporate him and then he found his footing and then they ramped up and like went through the gauntlet. And that's something that has happened in the past too. It's like you have these teams that are very dominant in the regular season. LNG is usually that team, like in the Scout Tarzan era. And then when it came to like their first BO5, they always kind of lost that one with teams that were ramping up. And now everything is just super, super fast. It's all go, go, go. And you kind of hope that the pressure activates, the big game players. But to have that activate so soon, it's still cold. It's January, it gets funky very, very fast with this format.
But one thing I will say, if we want to pivot a bit, is even though Weibo has already played like the lesser names, they haven't played JDG, which was the match everyone obviously wants to see. I will say at this point, Yamato, a narrative that absolutely I can pick up for this performance so far is, I'm not joking, bro. Zhao Hu might be one of the most insane players you can just put anyone around. As long as you give him competent players, every team works with this guy somehow. Like, they're never like totally terrible. Like, and by the way, as he showed in this first like couple of weeks, you already saw this last year at Worlds. This is one of the players who clearly went to fucking work on that Aurora as soon as it came out. Like, this guy understood way before a lot of the other teams how to use it, made it a threat where I think this is one of the players you have to ban this against. I think he's one of his best champions, mate.
I feel like there's so many parallels between Jahu and Faker in terms of how they are as players. I do think that it's like when it comes to like some of the mechanical champions, there's definitely like moments where Jahu is lacking, like whether it's like the Tristana or like some moments, but he has like the Lucian in the back pocket, that's like a Jahu classic that he played a lot in the previous year. The Aurora was fantastic even at the World Championship now too. I do think that, it's like when I look at this Weibo roster, I do think Jahu is a player that pairs better with the junglers like Tarzan. Like I have this specific category of junglers where I put basically Tarzan, Kanavi, Canyon, and then maybe Lucid. He's growing on me. Okay. Where like these junglers are junglers capable of like really driving games through them, while Tian is like a fantastic facilitator. I don't see him being that guy to be like 100 CS head on Lilia and just like completely destroying the game. But I think in terms of how this roster is built up, Jahu, Tian being facilitators, I do think it puts a spotlight on how good Light has been too, I think Light is one of the most underrated ADCs.
You almost never heard his name mentioned last year, but even last year he cooked, bro. He was just really good, yeah.
If someone told me I think Light was the best performing AD of the last year, I would be like, I'm down.
It's not an outrageous statement, no.
It's like Light was so damn good in that meta, and I think that he's been so damn consistent, even in their world run. It's like thinking back at what the meta kind of walked in. It's like Weibo Gaming got to the finals because their bot lane was capable of making the shifts into the T1 meta that nobody else on the other side of the group managed to do. You saw the JDG try, and they were not in the same pocket. And then all of a sudden, you see Light playing the Caitlyn. They were willing to play like the range matchups. They were willing to play the Senna. And I think Light is just an extremely, extremely underrated player. And Breathe has also been improving. Back on the point of Jahu, I do think it's like, I will just leave it again with rephrasing, this, or just saying again, the parallel between him and Faker in terms of what they are in regionally, I think is very, very similar.
Yeah, that's one thing where I've done this as hot takes on my Hot Take Point Made League of Legends short set. By the way, we'll be coming back and we'll do the takes from fans, etc. One of the things that I always said, Zhao Hu is who people think is who people think Faker is because to me, look, obviously I'll give it to Faker in the sense that he's had all these clutch players at Worlds. Xiaohu hasn't done that yet at Worlds. He's just been like, all right at Worlds, or he's had the odd good run, But I will say, if you want to look at people who are captains from mid lane, like they clearly understand shot calling, macro, they can work with different types of players. And I look, this is a bit more debatable to people now because everyone's remembering that like Silas Chovy game of Faker at Worlds. In general, I actually would even give the edge slightly to Xiaohu on the mechanics. I have seen splits in the last few years where he also mechanically could be up to par. It's just that they're not like, neither of them are in their prime individually. And crucially, as you're saying, they don't even try to play that way, mates. They actually understand this idea that essentially what I bring to the game is my experience, my overview of the game. So the point is, if you give them other pieces that are dangerous, if you give Faker, Zeus, and Gumayushi, he can do something with that, mate. If Ona's following him everywhere on the map, he can somewhat shot call or play make with these guys. And it's not just about out-handsing people and doing the craziest highlight ever. They'll beat you with their brain. And Xiaohu, for me, is definitely in that category. It's just maybe people don't know his personality as well because he's from China and he doesn't do as much media stuff. But I think this guy's one of the geniuses in League of Legends, bro.
Definitely like one of the best, like just looking at his career, it's like one of the best ones to have played for sure. Like he should be like in the top 10, like in the conversation of players.
Yeah.
Like in terms of what he has done, like at MSI, his role switch to top lane, just be like one of the best top laners from like instantly almost, like really completely revamping how people even play top lane in terms of like the champions and just kind of making fun of top laners in a region where top laners are demons. Like, LPL top laners are just straight up demons. I think the main thing, I think you hit it on the head, is like the big difference is just like the Worlds runs are just not good for Xiaohu. Like the Worlds runs are tough, man.
It's a bit of a close Worlds career, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's just always like RNG and the Xiaohu Worlds runs are just really, really cursed. Last year at Worlds was also, it's like Aurora looked good, everything else was just kind of suffering. He tried to play what he's comfortable with, but it just didn't land the same. But I do think like regionally, Xiaohu seems to be rallying like the right players around him. The roster building is always like in the right place around him. And I think Weibo should still be like a competitor in the LPL for sure.
I'll give you this one last angle as well, which is one of my favorite NFL players is the quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who's a really skilled player. What happened was when he'd had an injury and he came back from injury like 4 or 5 years ago, he had a year where for him, the numbers were like, 2/3 of what they normally would be in terms of like production. And so people were saying like, oh, you've had a bit of a down year. And he said, yeah, but if you ever look at it though, what for me is a down year would be like a career year for someone else. Xiaohu has that factor, right? If people don't know, these last 2 years weren't even good years for Xiaohu. Like the 2023, he was actually, people thought he was washed. Somehow he tripped over, was in the World's Finals. Then this last year, again, before summer, before they got Tarzan, no one thought Weibo was going to be at fucking Worlds. They not only did that, they were in the final of the LPL. They had no business being there, by the way. Then went to Worlds, and then were still in the playoffs, and people forget. If they hadn't have drawn BLG, who even knows? Maybe they would have been in the semis. Maybe they could have had a cheeky run. They weren't a bad team. I always thought in that Swiss, they sort of like were slightly better than people thought. They would sort of like win games where it just got messy. So again, this guy, if you're a normal League of Legends player, bro, if I get to go to World's Final or I get to be in the LPL final, that must be the best year of my career. Those are fucking down years for this guy. Those aren't even the years he'll remember like 10 years from now. I agree. What an unbelievable career he's had. The longevity, all the different teammates, that's another thing. How many teammates has he had now, mate? It's not, people originally used to do that thing where they made it like RNG was just Uzi Eye and 4, background dancers. No, actually what people missed was Xiaohu was fucking insane back then too. And the difference is, he's outlasted Uzi Eye. He's just still going now. That's why also he's comparable to Fake. It's also insane they're still even relevant in their major regions in like 2025. Guys, they've been doing it for 10 plus years. It's bonkers.
It's absolutely crazy, bro. I'm stealing this Aaron Rodgers thing. I don't know shit about NFL.
That's a great line.
I need this one. I need this one to protect Chovy sometimes, because sometimes. Right. Yes. I have to protect my boy Chovy. It's like a bad game for Chovy, bro. It's your best game of some of the other homies, So I'm stealing this one. I'm putting it in the back pocket, man.
Exactly. Right. Let's go on. How about you pick a team? Pick a team you want to talk about.
Ooh. Honestly, I kind of like JDG's like opening game. I liked them, bro. They kind of remind me of, LNG of like the previous version. It's like they seem to be very, very controlled in their approach. I liked how they played, and like you mentioned, the Weibo Gaming JDG matchup. I think that's kind of hype. Like their opening game was pretty damn solid. Like they controlled the flow of the game just through and through. I think that Ale kind of looked sometimes, a little bit all over the place, and maybe this is the guy that should be like the concern, because I do think there's like maybe 4 or 5 top laners above him that can definitely like put him in the bin. I didn't want to make this pun, but it happened.
Sure.
But in regards to everything else, it's like Missing looked good. CV Max was doing his like a regular cooking, with the Nidalee for Shun, that he's known for. We saw a scout on Jace. Pays looked fantastic. I'm just curious to see, always when you have teams moving from big teams and they kind of have to reinvent themselves, it usually goes in 2 directions. Like either they fall flat completely or they just elevate to the next level. And I think this was like a good step in the right direction for Pays in terms of what he showed. Fantastic Ziggs performance. I don't remember who else he played, but I do remember that he played super, super well. So I'm very excited for that JDG Weibo matchup, because Weibo like dropped the game against like World Elite. I was like, what the hell are they doing? Well, this is like the Weibo we know. It's like they slowly ramp up, and you kind of don't get concerned about the occasional game that they drop. It's okay.
No, I'm with you, because I actually do think it's just because Pays joined at the very end almost of the off season, so people weren't like prepared for JDG to be good, and then you Ruler left. Remember, anytime someone like Ruler leaves, you think the team's gonna be shit now, isn't it? Like, I actually think low key they sort of cooked with this roster, mate. Like, because it's not just the names. Like, by the way, I think every name on this roster is good. Like, I've for years now, bro. One of the ways I know people don't watch the LPL is they only remember Ale from a million fucking years ago on LNG at Worlds, like 3 or 4 years ago at this point in time. They don't know this guy was fucking really good. Like, on EDG, he was like a mini The Shy. He could have just carry performance. He could have the odd game that was shit too, certainly. But he could have real carry performances. And actually, in a world where like Bin was just the shit in top lane, there was very few players could ever go head to head with him. That's why people did give praise to the 369s and Zekas of the world. Ale was in that one for me. For me, he was a prospect. So I even thought it was kind of cool they filled out the roster. As you said with Jun, mate, I think it's actually, I don't know what happened internally that they benched Jun and brought Wayne. Now they chose not to take him now. I thought Jun was the better jungler personally, especially because if you think of Spring last year, mate, he was fucking sick. And his hands are real. He has some like canyon hands, mate. He is a really talented player. So what I love is, as you say, CV Max looks like he's playing to him, mate. He's gonna give this guy a chance. If JDG's good, like it's actually someone like Jun that'll have a chance to be the MVP, mate. Like he's actually gonna have a lot of impact on games, it looks like. And yeah, you just look at the roster, there's no bad players in this roster, mate. It's just about if they can get the blend right. And I'm with you. The Weibo game, by the way, perfect chance to see. Let's see if they're good enough.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think Shun, it's that Bilibili story is so strange, because it just seems it's weird to say from outside, but Bilibili just seems like the players just seem happier. They seem like more in tune with how Shun is. It's like I watched like these behind the scenes videos, right, and it just seems like, it's like Shun and Bin is like the homies. They're the homies, like
God, they got to Yamato, guys.
They got to be, because bro, all these SmackDown episodes, bro.
He's doing that thing where it's like, oh, look at the way that Shun laid his head on the shoulder of, oh God.
I blame Kazi, bro. I blame Kazi, because Kazi really at the SmackDown episode, the story is just too crazy. Where he's like, I don't want to do a trial with players. I want to go out and drink with them. That's how I figure out if the team is going to work or not,
You've got to remember not to have a drink with Hylissang right before the game, mate. He has to be in the game. That's your problem. Too much Jameson, too much Jameson on the rocks. I think that's the problem there. So
no,
we'll get to that criminal behavior later.
Shun is just like such a high ceiling,
Yeah.
I feel like the MSI thing kind of,
yes,
made him seem very,
mate. Yeah,
he just seems so one-dimensional in his approach. But I just felt like that was Bilibili's problem as a whole. I do think like when Wei come in, they played a lot more controlled games, and I can imagine from a coach's side that feels like really good. Sure. It just seems like that Wei seems to be like more of a play that they can direct, and maybe they just believe that they have enough firepower on that roster to go, because Shun is a wild cannon, and I think that team has enough wild cannons. So I can see the argument for, but I do think the best version of Bilibili was indeed the one we saw with Shun, because in the end he did like save their Worlds run, because it started quite bad with Wei.
No, I'll tell someone is, if someone is still underrates this player, go watch the Nidalee game 1 that Yamato referenced, and then you tell me how many LEC junglers could do that on Nidalee. Like, you just let me know, because I've always said that in the same way as classically Fiora or Jace in the top lane was like the difference between East and West. Nidalee jungle is a massive fucking reason. It's one of the reasons, by the way, why I do glaze the fuck out Razork. He can play that Nidalee jungle, but a lot of the others can't. They won't even lock it in, bro. They don't want to play that. And actually, you'll see this split because of Fearless Draft. People might have to play that sometimes. So I don't think there's not many players can play at that. So like I say, I actually think he's unleashed now, mate. or unleashed or whatever. You can figure it out. You know, you can do something with that. We'll workshop that. We'll come back to that in a later episode. I'll have one of my minions write that down and we'll workshop that to be better. So it's all good. I'll pick a team now then. We'll go team for team. We'll do that on the initial one just to keep it interesting. Because obviously we're not going to talk about everyone. Right. An obvious one to bring up is Billy. Because here's the thing. I think when you look at this roster, because they did keep a roster that won the LPL last year in the summer split, and I agree with you. I thought it was slightly going off at Worlds, and I think it was the right move to bring Jung back in. I even think you saw the way he played, and by the way, he was just better on Skarner. That's just a fact, in my opinion. I actually think when you look at this roster, bearing in mind, EDG is irrelevant now, guys. Like, that is not a dangerous group for BLG. They're almost certainly going to get out this group and probably in first place. To me, I don't even look at this team like, you know, can they be their best? This is the team for me that you should be looking at. The IG Glazing's half a joke. This is the team that you look at and ask, can they do the Golden Road? That's actually a real plot. When you have players of this level, that is a plausible discussion to have. So what I would ask is, obviously, we've only seen the one series. What are your thoughts on BLG? Any fears or concerns for this split or going forwards?
Not really. Like they seem to just have fun in that series. It was very reminiscent of like previous years. It's like you could see like there was that game where Knight was playing Swain and he was just like fucking around. Like it was a horrible Swain spot and he just picked it and you could just see him giggling, you know, on stage, you know, he's just having fun. It seems like Billy is just, until they lose, I will believe in them, you know? It's like, but that's the thing. I'm with you in the sense that these guys should have the ambition to win it all. Like if they lose an LPL split, that would be like insanely shocking, because in terms of how they should maneuver around Fearless, which is like the chaotic element of winter, these guys should be like primed, because like On plays everything, Elk plays everything, Knight plays more than everything, and Bin is also just like has adapted himself to be very multi-dimensional. Wei plays less champions, but I don't think that he's ever going to be like in the crosshairs of anything when you're preparing against fucking Billy. You need to target the other homies on that team, and I do think that the chaotic element of Fearless is going to be an environment where Billy can thrive. And I think maybe that would be like the hot take angle, because I do think the LCK looks by far and beyond like the top three, looks insanely strong. How Alive, like GenG just looks, in terms of gameplay, just looks demonic, even though they played like that close game. But it's like, if the hot take is that Billy could win the first stand, it would be because, this is a team that should thrive in, of course, Fearless environments, knowing how crazy LPL can get and knowing these players' champion pools.
What's funny is, even though for Bin, I mean, people might not know, but last split in the LPL, Bin was just playing like 4 champions, because he was the guy who could just like first pick a jack anywhere and then just win. Like he was just so good on his champions. Like, why wouldn't you play to him? I actually think that I agree with you, Yamato. I actually think one of the players who will benefit the most from Fearless Draft is fucking Knight. And the reason why is, do you know what one of the most frustrating things is if you watch the LPL all these years? Right back to when he first came in like 2019 and he was this prospect, is this guy in the LPL had Champion Ocean every year. He was like 10 champions. And we're not talking about you just lock in 10 champions. I'm talking he could get wins on the 9th and the 10th champion, and there can be stuff outside his comfort zone. But then every time he went to Worlds, he would just pick the most meta chat. He would just pick like fucking Orianna or like Galio. And it's like, bro, listen, you're good on some of these champions too. But I actually always hated that at Worlds. In fact, I actually think this Worlds final was one of the few times I've ever seen him pick what looked strong for him. Oftentimes he looked like he would just default to the meta, or it looked almost like he just took what his coaches pick. But I've always thought this guy never flexed at Worlds. His crazy champion pool. Like, this guy really has the matchups where there's just one side of the matchup you can't play, and he can play that one, or he can play, again, champions that aren't even meta at the moment. I actually think in Fearless, in BO5, when he's going to be forced in some of those game 4s and 5s to play the other ones, that's where it's going to be dope. Because another reason why I don't want a guy like this playing the Galio, even though he's good on it, is, bro, the reason why a faker plays Galio is then he cannot take his mind off using the hands and fucking play the map. You've got the hands! Like, I always think it's only that Chovy exists, people don't go crazy on Knight. This guy's skill level's unbelievable. I want this guy all day on the Silences of the world and the fucking super hard carry champs. Like, this guy could be a monster. So I always felt like sometimes, I don't know whether it's confidence where he listens to the court, I don't know what it was, but every Worlds I always felt like, except for this last one, I never really saw the full Knight that was the LPL MVP and all first team stuff. I feel like Fearless, for a player like him, it's just going to force him to play the other champions. You're just going to see that he can go. This guy, I think, can always go 7-8 champions deep, mate. He's just got that game somehow.
100%. I just would like like just going through his catalog, like one of the best Syndras in the world, one of the best Silases in the world. The Ari win ratio was just like a big storyline, always just following, like, can anyone beat his Ari? Like, he plays the mages. Like, the main thing that was always lacking for him is Azir. That one looks kind of goofy, but like he could drop like 10 kill bangers on a Koki. He could drop a 10 kill banger on a Lucian. I think that like the main thing was maybe like an MSI. I think that was. I think MSI was just Chovy being so far above anybody else, because nobody could really like operate Aurelion Sol and Corki at the level that Chovy did. So like everyone just banned that shit against him. Then he had like the Talia in the back pocket. I do think that Knight as a player, just champion pool wise, he should just be ready for anything. If I follow up, please, the last two teams I would just bring up because they're kind of in the same box. It's like LGD and TT. I think it's like LGD specifically, like I mentioned them earlier, it's like in terms of just being mechanically super, super good, I feel like they got giga shafted just by the group draw, right? It's like the group draw being based off of placements from the previous year made it very, very strange. But the fact that LGD is there in the group together with Top Esports and anyone's legend, I do think that LGD as a team, I think this is a team that could maybe like progress well into like in the future in a format that allows them to, because I think anyone's legend Top Esports was just going to top the group and they're going to move on. I think TT as well, like the main player that just stands out there is like 1xN he's just been putting in shifts for so long. I think this is a player that just belongs on a top 5 team because this guy is so damn good. He drags his team, and it's just so obvious in these games where TT is playing against like a lower end team that plain and simple, like Thunder Talk is just like 1xN is just way better than every other player in that lobby, because as you mentioned before, it's like that group is kind of weird with EDG being as bad as they are, and also LNG just completely leaving Zika behind in a prison with a bunch of like random players. So TT is probably going to get out of that group. I think 1xN is a player that just, this guy has a future for sure.
No, and actually the downside, I will say, because obviously these rosters, especially the LGD one, are not players, they're not name value. No one knows these players unless you've really gone deep on the LPL in past seasons and you know the hype around people. The one downside is this. It is also going to be brutal for teams like that, because that's exactly the sort of team that would have benefited from the old LPL formats, where you could play loads more games, you get more chances to show off and show that you're actually good and play. By the way, even that group system in summer where you'd play like the bad teams if you're bad, but then you could beat them and show you're the best of those ones, that would actually potentially have been very beneficial for some of these players, whereas instead they're just going to lose like 3 series or 2 series and then just be out of the fucking tournament, and everyone who's in the international crowd are never going to know who these guys are. But for all we know, maybe some of them actually have future. Like, there's prospects of these teams, right?
For sure, yeah. A 1xN stands out. LGD, like I think just XQW. That guy is a mechanical demon. I like their top laner as well, Sassy. I like these names. It turned out I'm just calling their mid laner XQC because it just rolls off the tongue a little bit easier. But this man's not from Quebec, so there's that. It's fun to see the players on the come up, because it's always weird, at least from my side, when I always hear the news is about how the rules are changing in terms of like players playing less in China. It's like our prospects are going to come up. It's like there are new laws in terms of if players can play, or like young people can play or not. Like, I don't know what's happening. Is the talent pipeline going to die out? Like, what's happening? It worries me though for the longevity of LPL, because everybody keeps saying, it's like, I don't have the inside track, but everyone keeps talking like the LPL is dying. It's like, this is dire if Bilibili don't win worlds. So I'm happy that new names are coming through. Like, that's a good sign always.
No, I'm with you. Right, okay. I agree, by the way. The LPL, the problem is we haven't had many of the big matchups yet, so there wasn't anything really crazy to talk about. That's why I thought we'd do like a mixture of like thoughts on the roster and then initial openings. Let's do LCK. So obviously over at LCK, there have been immediately one match that we must discuss. There's been 2 that were the big ones. If you don't know, we've already had GenG Hanwha Life, which is obviously a potential finals rematch. Some people think those might end up being the 2 best teams of the year. Like, there's a very real interesting discussion we had there. But let's start first with the obvious one. which is Dom's favorite series, which is obviously that Dplus. So it's not even players you actually like fucking think are good, but it's people like Beryl again. So Beryl's doing a Beryl roll and he's fucking beat T1 because that's who Beryl is. You have to understand. He just trips over and does stupid shit like beat T1. So give me some thoughts on this one because I thought this was hilarious, bro. Like, if people don't know, Dplus right before this with their real lineup was losing to fucking Brion or whatever in that like pre-season cup thing. So the idea they then come in and just beat the real T1. That's his classic Dplus. And give me some thoughts on this series, bro.
I have to say, bro, our homie Showmaker is looking refreshed, man. He is looking so refreshed. I thought last year was going to be like just a downtrend of Showmaker because mechanically just wasn't there. He didn't have, just that aura in the game where you just know it's like, oh, Showmaker just got a kill. Ooh, look at him on side. Damn, okay, this game is brewing into something. So it's incredible to see just Showmaker being in good form again. I think mechanically, this roster, the way it's been put together, is just they are insane with the exception of Barrow because Barrow's still a silly psychopath. My man goes like 2-8 on enemies and still wins the game.
But here's the thing with him. What they need to do is, I'll give you a quick tangent, right? You know this. You know that famously Koreans have a nickname for Hylissang, and the nickname is the Professor, right? But what's silly is, if you hear that as a Westerner, you don't understand that's sort of fucked up in translation. You're going to think it means he's some mastermind like Zhao Hu Mata, like, my God. No, they mean in the sense that like when he does a play, because they don't understand it, if it works, they're like, it must just be like 10D chess or something. They mean like it's like you can't understand what he's doing. Bro, Beryl needs a name like that. His name needs to be like the Mad Professor or the Nutty Professor or something.
I think it already is.
What's mad is, yeah, I know he has something like that. But I mean, the reason why I say it is because I do think sometimes he looks like he's just doing like stupid picks or he's playing in a weird way, but it works more than you would think it would. It does. And so there has to be like a method to the madness, Yamato. He's not really just an idiot. Like he's clearly got a different vision of League of Legends, right?
I do think that what I appreciate about both Beryl and Hilly is like they are so decisive. They are the most decisive people on earth where nothing can stop them from what they want to do. Not even their teammates, not even the elements, not even if there's an earthquake actively happening, they are going to do what they perceive as good. And regardless of the game condition, it's like sometimes you need players like that take initiative because opportunities are very few in games. It comes across as very ugly sometimes where people are not in sync with what they are trying to achieve, or maybe the window is just wrong. But I'd rather have that in a lot of cases than just dying slowly. With this down one roster, it's like looking back at what their problems were last year with their support situation with Kellen and Moham. Dplus was a team that could lane well, and then it just always fizzled out. It's like you could never trust their gold leads. You could never trust them to progress the game.
The most late game macro of any like world's elite team, wasn't it? It was terrible, wasn't it?
Their nickname, like basically, they were the Korean fanatic, and like that was the nickname. It's like they had gold leads, and they just didn't seem to be relevant, and they could only really win games where like the meta aligned perfectly for aiming when it was like Zeri, Ezreal, Kaiser, and he was super good at it. But now with the changes to the map, with Atakan, everything going faster, and they can like mechanically express themselves with the addition of Beryl, I think it's safe to assume that that it's kind of working. It's working. We can see it real time as well. As everything is streamlined. We see Lucid as a player. Always knew he was mechanically super good, but where he would always falter is in like the in-betweens, in the macro aspects, being in the wrong spot. And now most of the games that we watch with Dplus is just a lot of fighting around the objectives. If there's any argument for Atakan, I do think that Atakan has improved the quality of gameplay in LCK because the games are very active, which is
boring. Fun. Yeah, true. You don't ever do the handshake slow macro game, right?
Yeah, like fuck that shit, bro. So it's like LCK has benefited from it for sure. I think Dplus, just to come back to the main point, just Showmaker playing super well. The rookie that they brought in, Siwa as well. I don't watch too much LCK CL, but this guy, like in just
he's legit, mate.
100%. Just like in a region where you don't have top laners, where T1 lose their top laner and Keen is out and they need to sign Doran, like the lists down the name, they are just not exciting enough. And Siwu showed different sides to himself. He seems very comfortable on stage. He plays the Sion, he plays the Rumbles and the Kisantas. Usually he plays everything that is relevant. And I think that's a good sign for the LCK because Dplus definitely hit the ground running in a very, very good way.
My joke would be, actually, my nickname for Dplus at Worlds last year would be Korean Opera, because they were like, you get a Swiss system win, you get a Swiss system win, not you, FlyQuest, you get a Swiss system win. They were just giving out wins for free, and it didn't matter. The worst thing about their team, if you want to compare it to this T1 game, is it didn't matter if they had a lead at 18 minutes in the game. They're probably going to find a way to either fuck it up or give you a way back in. That's the worst thing of all, is when it's not even that you did like a misplay, you just you're like, do you want a chance? They would just throw you a chance for no reason. And part of the problem was, obviously, it wasn't the same roster as this. Like, I'm with you, by the way. The Siwoo guy is a clear upgrade in top lane and actually looks like a really well-scouted prospect. I sort of see what you mean by that. If you were T1 and you could go back in a time machine now, look, you'd probably actually just not fuck up the Zeus deal. But if you know Zeus is going and it's only Thorin, maybe you'd have gambled on this guy. Maybe this guy could have been the new stud top player that you could build up and show how to play the game. Lucid actually did the classic trend that every pleb thinks that good rookies do, but they don't usually. A lot of rookies do have like an all right first season, then drop off second season, and then they sort of get it. This guy did the dream, he does the step up on the graph. It's just the lines go like this, and he just did this. He was good enough for a rookie. Now he's actually looking like a real prospect. And then the key thing for me is this. This is where Beryl, because like I say, I do think even though he's got a weird mind, he does have a mind for macro concepts, clearly. Like he just understands things about like when to, as you say, take initiative, make a play on the map, do something that might look crazy, but it's actually what you need to do when you're behind or something. This is a different Dplus. And I've always thought, sadly, because of how the playoffs went last year and Worlds, people, if they don't watch LCK in the summer last year, you don't realize how good aiming can be. But his problem is he's not that player that has like the polish of the ruler or the great ADC that can like always carry the game. He sometimes needs, I think, like a little bit of piloting when it's in the later part of the game, because he was always famous even on KT. He could completely carry you a game, or he could be the one guy that just threw the game Jackie Love style randomly at the end of the game, and you just like, what the fuck? Why did he go in there? So I think this is a guy where if you just put an arm on this guy's shoulder, nope, not quite yet, or hold, let him cook. That's all I need from Beryl, because I actually think I'm with you. Showmaker's the one that no one could have expected. Everyone thought, right, he was definitely not as good last year. The fact that Canyon's still dope on GenG, it makes people think, maybe Showmaker's actually the one just living on name value. Like, let's be real, he's in Dplus, he was always in Damwon. Actually, he looks like it could be a bounce back here, I've got to say, because, mate, first game of that series was fucking ridiculous. It was like over like 5 minutes. It felt like it was so quick, that game. Like, T1 put up no resistance at all. At least the game through a little bit more, but fucking hell, mate, that first game was really, I was astonished. Even I'm joking when I think Dplus is going to beat them. I just did that because it was a good odds or whatever. Like, they actually just murked him in game one.
It was completely one-sided. I put Lucid in the same box as the Tarzan, Kanavi, and of course Canyon pool of junglers, because he is right now a player where you can just trust him with a damn lead.
Yeah.
Like that Nidalee game was fantastic, but there was also like a Lilia game where he played and he just drove the game completely. Like when leads are insanely meaningful for junglers, that's rare, where they can carry that momentum forward, because you need to be able to drive the game through you. It's like your teammates need to land on your timings and be there for your timings. And thinking back where Showmaker and Canyon peaked together, that was exactly in those environments. It's like the evolution that went from 2019 down one to 2020 down one when they won the World Championship was where the cooperation of Showmaker and Canyon was really like forged into something beautiful, because before that, they were just individually mechanically talented.
Yep.
That G2 famous series that they lost against G2, they were just getting pulled apart because Caps was pushing mid, roaming top, denying Nuguri, and they were just kind of disconnected from each other. So I'm excited for this Dplus kind of renaissance. I do get these vibes from old. My main concern would be like over time, as the teams, like the three kings, so to speak, that they need to beat to make it further into, of course, playoffs if it comes down to, because the form is kind of weird. We're going to have situations where teams are going to maybe be eliminated early. I do think that progression over time is like last year when I think about Beryl, he, in my mind, was the reason why KT couldn't beat T1. It's like his goofiness just went too far. And sometimes in these series as well, when like there's like these moments where you're just getting caught in leads, it's fun until you start losing for it. And in my mind, I think as precision increases, it's very important that Beryl's precision also increases, because I think right now everyone is in a state where you can get away with more, where being bold gives you a lot more. But the progression, if we want to see Dplus be like a contender potentially, which is very difficult considering the rosters, they need to kind of elevate that position. And I think it, of course, starts and ends with Beryl, but that's a very tough demand to make from Beryl, you know, because he's in the pool of players like Shy. It's like, how do you coach this guy, you know? It's like, this guy is playing some other game now. You're going to tell him off. He's going to run you down to punish you. He's definitely, you know, a man in his own way, it seems.
No, he's one of those players where every team has to be a Beryl team or it's just not going to function. You have to play to his strengths and allow him somewhat to cook and then just work around. Obviously, one of the reasons why I never had any faith in that KT Rolster team, and I only ever used to basically bet them if they had insane odds, is because you can't have Beryl and Pyorshik at the same time. Like, the fuck? What is that? That would be like making a team with like Hylissang and fucking Malrang. Like, good luck. Like, listen, one thing I'll promise is there's going to be a lot of action, but I don't know if it's going to be good for you. They might just like I have a joke I used to say in Counter-Strike, because in Counter-Strike the economy is obviously the factor that goes against you. I used to say that when people try to like stop them game when they're losing the game, if you do the wrong moves in it, same concept as doing bad macro plays, you just snowball the game against yourself. You make it harder for yourself. Like, those guys can make you lose in record time. The difference is, actually, it looks like a way better blend in this squad. Because like we're saying, they've got like the younger players, but then they've got the veteran play. I actually think the mix is excellent. By the way, Aiming is a player where if I'm their coach, I just tell him, mate, we're going to play old school ADC. Shut the fuck up, hit minions, and we'll tell you when to move around the map. You just do that. And I know this guy has the skill, mate. I actually do think he's a very underrated skill player. You definitely can carry games. You saw it here. Meanwhile, if you want to swap over, by the way, this is, look, I know it's only early doors, but fuck, this is one of the reasons, Yamato, why I actually think I've had a lot of takes on T1. I'm worse than Dom. I think they're actually not going to be relevant, this split, mate. Like, one of my main concerns I kept pointing out to people is it's not even about Doran. I'm not even a Doran hater. I think he's okay, actually. My problem is they've lost all those things that Zay's brought to the team. And I think if you watch this series right now, the question you have to ask yourself going forwards is the one I've had the whole time they made this roster, which is who's the one player every game I know can carry the game? I don't even know the answer to that question, because in theory it should maybe be Gumayushi, but I don't think they've ever tried to play that style in T1 pretty much, unless it was his meta, you know. I'm really worried for him, because I think you saw in this series that Doran's just going to have some series where he just doesn't have any impact. That's not like that. He's not solo losing you all the games, but this team, I think they will lack a bit of firepower or carry presence in this team. I'm a bit scared for T1, mate. Look, again, as we talked about with the Dplus convo, it's not like they're going to be like sixth or something because of it, but it's going to be really hard to contend with those top two, I think. And actually, let's see how the other squads do. If the Dplus of the world go on, they're not really going to beat GenG, but this is the sort of team maybe they can be comparable to or above. What do you think of T1?
I think that, like, looking at T1 so far, the best performer, I think Faker played like pretty damn well. Like, usually that isn't the case. Like he's one that like ramps up. His spring split most of the time seem pretty damn good, but like usually Faker is not the guy that they rely on. Like his Victor performance, he was the one like trying to drag the games over the finish line together with, of course, Owner. I think in regards to everybody else, I think that Keria, same as always. I his Elise game was wonderful. Renata game was wonderful. But then when he was playing, like trying to play the most standard stuff, like his bar game looked very, very off against Dplus. It just looked like they were encountering like the same issues of the past. Looking at the issues of the past with T1, it was always how do they secure river control and presence with jungle support pairings that require them to work together. It's like T1 were always cheating the game by playing supports that are very, very fast on the map, in Bard and Pike and Rakan and range supports in general, to gain all vision through mid lane while Owner is just farming. Owner is the type of player that wants to be 200 CS on his Vi, reach 3 items and just 1v9 the team fight on his utility, because this is what he does so well. But when they played the melee supports, you could always see that suffering. And now the main thing is, like in a world where you have a player like Doran, who is someone that I think his biggest strength is that his output is always kind of even.
Yes.
In a bad game, he's going to be evenish.
In a sense, right?
Sorry?
He's the opposite of the Shy. He doesn't have the crazy peaks on the floor. He just has like the flat lines.
Yeah. Just like a steady pulse, you know. His heart rate's not gonna go up too crazy. Like you see it in the Jax game. Like that was a Jax game where he was in a very, very good position to carry the game. He had the resources needed to in terms of his champion contextualized everything else in the game, and just didn't. He couldn't find the timings on the flank. He couldn't find the moments to go, which was kind of similar to what we saw with his issue in his NAR game against, of course, Billy, where How Life lost the series. This is not what you expect from Doran. I think that Doran is a player that you just kind of, if you have a bot lane that can just drag the game for you. It's like the Doran GenG roster was with like Ruler, and they just played through bottom side and played through Chovy, and Doran was just on an island. That functioned super, super well. Now I'm with you. It's like Gumayushi, I think that he can play the carry champion super, super well. But the issue is, I think that Korea as a player, he's the carry of the bot lane. It's like Gumayushi has been picking champions to facilitate Korea for as long as we remember. It's like Varus, Kalista, like even Caitlyn. It's like all of these champions are being picked to make sure that Korea has the freedom to pick something like a Baron 4-5, to drop the Renata, to drop these AD carry supports that he did, or the Senna even. Like Gumayushi has adapted himself to Korea, and now they have to kind of work backwards, because in order to play the more carry-heavy AD carry style, which is kind of tough now, all things considered, because of where the meta is, because of AD carries and crit ADs being just weak, I do think this is going to be like a very strange hole for them to kind of dig themselves out of, because T1s, how they constructed the previous year, Korea and Zeus were the carries. They were the ones that kind of warped the draft around them, and they won games through that when they were allowed to do so at the World Championship. And now with Doran, they kind of have to reinvent themselves, but they've tried. They tried even with the Zeus rosters when the meta was in the wrong place. They tried. Yes. And now the main thing that is concerning for me with T1 is that they tried to pull these kind of classic T1 drafts with like classic champions that they play, but even that is not pulling them out of the hole. We had like Jhin, Bard, Azir, Poppy. Like these are all standard champions that we like to see T1 on, but even that couldn't kind of cheat a win at that moment in time. So I am very concerned. I think there is a chance that T1 fall very, very early in this season, especially with how the format is, seeing as that their group side is most likely just gonna lose, and they have to play through kind of a lower bracket to even get into the playoff stage.
That's actually my major fear about this team, is I always thought, Yamato, I don't know what other people think, but I think if you look at those past 2 to 3 years of T1, but obviously the last two where they were the world champions at the end of the split, if you'd have ever done like the opposite of a fearless draft approach, if you'd have told people you're only allowed to pick the most obvious meta champions and comps, T1 could never have won a Worlds, bro. It's not even like the chance. Like, if you had to play just normal standard meta, that was never their style. And people will know in both of their Worlds runs, I mean, there's even stories to back this up, but if you even just use your eyes, it looks like they have a key loss both times in the group stage that makes them go, oh, we can't play the meta. Fuck that. Go back. Pick champions, like you're saying, that play to our strengths. What can we do uniquely? Like, what can Zeus play in a top lane to relieve pressure from Faker? What can he do to have an interesting counter matchup? And Keria, obviously, it's about, can he get out on the map? He doesn't want to be stuck in lane on Braum. Like, these players, when people kept saying that thing, like they made their own meta, it's because they had those two players. Those two players were not only extremely good as top and support, they had this insane like champion pool factor, which just changed, as you say, the way you play the map, the way the team plays. So look, I'll give you this. My mate Zabatine from Hot Point Made always loves the angle of like Order and Faker play together on the map, etc. That's true. That's awesome. Gumayushi actually, I think, has done a good job of in his meta. He can be the carry. If it's not, he can play the weak side, etc. The problem is, though, now that you don't have Zeus, first of all, it's going to be hard to unlock Kerry in all these scenarios. And if you have to just with Doran play some normal series of just we're all picking the meta champions, bro, it's going to be rough for this team. Like, you're going to have, like, obviously we're going to talk about them in a minute. You're going to have a really hard time against GenG in Hyper Life. Like, that is going to be a fucking nightmare. Like, again, because, I mean, I just think they have better players than you, mate. I don't know how you're going to beat them straight up.
It's just this off season. It's like you always have to contextualize it to everything else that's moving around you. Like GenG How Alive have like both teams, both rosters are like once in a lifetime rosters. It's just crazy how good they are. Like in a different scenario, let's say Zeus went to LPL and like maybe How Alive were in a position where they needed to gamble and Doran went to T1. Maybe things would look different, but it's like the How Alive GenG rosters are, it's like it's demonic how well put together they are and what the potential is. It's like even now knowing how good he is, it's like already from the get-go just hit the ground running, plays wonderfully, especially in the How Alive series. Like contextualizing their like just roster to that, damn, they really are hurt in this off season. But the T1 fans would say to us, Thorin, they would say, this is as far away from the World Championship as you can get. So it doesn't matter.
And they always tell me, Yamato, even though Faker has the most LCK titles ever and the most regional titles at 10, they always tell me LCK doesn't even count anymore, so who gives a fuck? So yeah, if you remember, you're a fool to try now. You've got to save your energy, sort of like powering up in Dragon Ball Z. This is like when you send Krillin out, it's not the main fight. Cell's not going to die now. You have to power up for Worlds to beat the final boss. Of course, that's when fucking Goku comes in. When Vegeta should have won, but the maker of the show just hates hard work, so he makes fucking dickhead Goku go, tripped over and got to Super Saiyan level 15. What were you working your life for that? I'll take this win. And then all you get if you're Vegeta is just Bulma. It's the way I don't even know that much about Dragon Ball Z, but that was masterful the way I wove all those references in.
Holy shit,
like
bro.
I watched it when someone else was watching it. I had a relative that was watching it. I was just watching it going, that shit. Oh, what's going on with Bulma? Shut up anyway. Vegeta's not that good. Right. So what I'm going to say is this, though. I do think that, yeah, they're in a tough spot now. So what I will say is this, Miato. What I'm really worried about is, one of the coolest things, even when T1 didn't win, was the notion that they were always top 3 at all the tournaments, weren't they? They were at every international tournament. Often they make the finals. I'm concerned, Yamato, they won't even need to get on a plane at the end of this split because they won't be at that international tournament, which is a shame because if they were, they could use one of our sponsors, ExpressVPN. Because when you go online without ExpressVPN, it's like not paying attention to the safety demonstration on a flight. Yeah, most of the time you'll probably be fine. But what if one day that yellow mask just drops down and you have no clue what to do? What would you do then exactly? So in this scenario, ExpressVPN, they have you covered. They have you protected. It's got more safe for your data, etc. Because every time, if you don't know, you connect to an unencrypted network, like at an airport, in a cafe, all sorts of places. Nowadays, people take their phone everywhere. They're doing it on the internet, Twitter, Reddit, Twitter. We all know all that stuff. Certain apps in China that may or may not be accessible right at this moment. I don't know if the status, question mark, to be announced. So obviously, when you do connect to those, your data isn't secure. Like you're on the network, you don't know who's scanning that. You don't know who's walking around with all devices and stuff. So anyone on that network, in theory, could gain data. Like I'm sure you have bank apps on your phone. I'm sure you're sending I don't know who you are, but you might be sending certain pictures to people that that was a little bit spicy. Let's just say credit card details if you shop online, etc. It doesn't actually take in the modern day that much like tech know-how to know how to actually crush this sort of a loophole that's open and get in there and steal all your stuff, and then suddenly fraud's going on. So since your data is valuable and hackers out there potentially want to get to it, that's why ExpressVPN is one of the best VPNs on the market, because they have the security aspect to you. Also, by the way, it's just really easy to use. Like it's one of the easiest VPNs I've ever seen. It's like it's made to be idiot proof. You just set the basic region. There's a big fucking red button. You just click on, off. You'll know when it's connected. It connects nice and quickly as well, in case you need to hop around. Sometimes streamers have to do that thing where you don't know what our routing is or what the network is. Or famously, Monty had to do it when he would do the show in Korea, because if you were in Korea, they wouldn't let you save the VOD because it's some weird legal thing. But when he would use the VPN to wherever it might be, that region would allow him to save the VOD. So it also works on all the devices you can imagine. It works on your phone if you're out there. It works on a tablet if you're looking at something on like you're watching one of those movies or something on a tablet. If you've got your laptop out there with you, obviously your home PC, all these things it works on. It's one of the highest rated things by all the tech reviewers. And I've actually used this VPN many times myself, especially in a really large Asian country that actually has an interesting relationship to internet security and firewalls, let's just say. I've used it many, many times there. How else would I get my obnoxious tweets out to all the CS fans of the world and make them all really upset on a daily basis? I don't want to break the habit of a lifetime. So don't break your data / your phone / your tablet in terms of security. Use ExpressVPN. You can secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/summoning. It's just summoning inside, just the word summoning, SUMMONIG. That's expressvpn.com. So that's EXPRESSVPN.com/summoning. And you can get an extra 4 months free. expressvpn.com/summoning. Thank you. Right, let's go on, because I teased it. The obvious first really crazy matchup of 2025 was we already got it. We got the GenG Hanwha Life matchup. And what's amazing about this one, right, is, dude, this reminds me so much of last year. Because you remember last year when they made the GenG super team, and everyone was like, whoa, it's a super team though. So like, they probably take them time to warm up and ramp up. And then straight out the gate, they were just blasting. Immediately, they were just coming out. Bro, this is why I do absolutely go way too ham on crazy name value when you're still in your peak. Because the kind of game that they had, especially like the second game, Yamato, against Hanwha looks like a fabulous roster. If GenG didn't exist, I'd say that's the team that should Golden Road and win everything. But the problem is, the romance of those names isn't just in my mind, Yamato. Holy fuck, when their hands are all firing, is it going to be hard to beat this team? Like, you know what I said about T1, they can't play standard? This team could probably play standard and just knock anyone the fuck out. They have got crazy punching power. Like every time I was in like a close fight, it would just be like a wipe all of a sudden out of nowhere and the game's over. This is nuts. I feel like it would look shit in a way they're probably not. Like, who can handle this GenG team, mate?
It was absolutely crazy because it's like the biggest thing which was missing with FaZe was when the draft moved you in a direction where FaZe needed to drive the game. It became very dangerous. It's like he was in many spots, many times, many famous moments where he needed to be the one stepping up to the play. And you can make a montage of those moments in game 5s, game 4s, where it was a deciding moment and he just couldn't pull through. And that's fine and all, like in the context of who he is, because he's very early on in his career. But Ruler is that guy. I think that second game, it was like the closest experience I felt to JDG 2023 because everyone was bought in to the idea of
it was sick, weren't they? It
was crazy. It was just JDG 2023 through and through. It's like in terms of how even a player like Chovy played. It's like he played the tank Galio. Like we've seen his Galio in the past, but that was the AP Galio that like one-shot you with the flash, with the W flash. This one he was like building space, he was creating space, making sure that his Jinx survived against a composition that is very hard to survive against. It's like I always say this thing on stream. It's like, oh, this guy needs to play like Prime Ruler to carry this game, because like in this game there was Vi, Aurora, Rakan, Ornn, Tristana, like everything designed to kill something that is immobile in a world where there's no longer any Gale Force. And the way they play the fights together, it's kind of like they showcased already so early on, like this was the missing piece from last year. Look at what we have. And just there it is. They play a hard carry bottom lane style with Ruler playing Jinx and of course Duro playing Lulu. I think it was just a beautiful game.
I always think the reason why people who are maybe very casual fans don't understand why all the experts I know think JDG 2023 is unreal, mate. Like a lot of people even agree with me that a lot of us think they're the best team ever, mate. As in, if you had to pick one team to drop in a game in a random meta, I think that's the team that could win because first of all, they do 5-5v5 front-to-back team fighting. That's always worked in League of Legends history. But also, this is one area I want to almost like pull back the curtain. You can't really coach that style of team fighting, guys. No one actually was really sitting down in a VOD review like an old Jack team fight breakdown and going, see, when he does that, you're going to commit. That's just like people intuitively playing off each other. And they just had the fucking blend, bro. Like, I don't know what it was. Like the way Knight and Ruler would play off each other in the team fight. Again, it's too fast. There's no way you could be calming that. And by the way, one speaks Chinese, the other speak fucking Korean. There's no way anyone was planning that out and charting it. They just had, it's like you just had the right pieces. They fit together and it just fucking, the result was beautiful. It looks like obviously very, very early doors on this, but there's a real potential for that roster in that sense. Now, I hope people realize now why. I almost say, even though it's insane because, yeah, Keria can be insanely impactful support, Mako. It almost doesn't matter as long as Duro isn't actually shit, as long as he's just all right. That's going to be enough. The rest of this team looks fucking so sick the way they fit together. Like, it's actually, like I say, it's kind of a dream because on paper, it looks amazing, but you never know. You never know. You never know who wants to play what way, if someone wants to change their style. This already looks, by the way, both in the result and in how they're playing. Like, this team looks like, I would bet behind the scenes this is already the best Korean team. I'll bet they just murk all the scrims. It looks like that, mate. They have that confidence right out of the gate.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think just Duro, I think it was just a perfect piece for them because in terms of what his responsibility is, it is just as you said, it's just be mechanically there. And Duro is a player now. Like last year, he was top 3 on the Korean ladder. He was just destroying the ladder. Like on his debut when he was swapped in for Execute Jonghoon, then like he looked solid. Nothing in particular, but that's what is necessary. It's like he doesn't need to tell his solo laners which waves to push or when to group or when he needs to look towards. Everything is just super easy. And in terms of how Duro executed the fights, Lulu looked fucking phenomenal. And also the Leona game as well, when he had the Nidalee on his side with the Ashe, also looked phenomenal. Those are the two sides of the coin that you want to have covered, when you think about a support. I do think like his first game against, in the other series where they played against, who was it? Was it the Fearx, I believe? They played against Fearx. That one was a little bit iffy, but at that point, it's like you performed against How Alive. That's all that matters, that's all that matters. Like having fun against Fearx. I'm not gonna put too much stock into that. So the GenG hype train is really, really real because they already answered like the big question. It's like when I saw Ruler and Viper just auto-attacking each other on the same screen, like I just realized I haven't seen this shit for 4 years, man.
Yeah.
Like we've missed this shit. Like this has been very, very a long time coming to just see them basic attack each other and just seeing Ruler, you just like do like these little moments where he's spacing, Viper just a little bit. It was like that 1v1 moment where Viper took a chance on the Tristana, which I understood in terms of the game state, but Ruler just executing there and just winning the 1v1 was just so beautiful in many, many ways.
Right. There's one team that's a big name that we haven't yet mentioned. And you know what's perfect? I've seen this movie before. Back to the Future meme, right? Think about this, Yamato. There's a KT Rolster team where you look at the roster and you're like, is this even a good team? They play against Fearx. It's kind of a bit sus. Like, what's going on here? Like it's not like Fearx is actually that good a roster even. Then you come and they're about to play a T1 in the classic Telecom one. If anyone knows how the last few years go, you throw all logic out the window. It doesn't matter how bad KT is. They always somehow have a chance to win the Telecom war, right? This is why I want to know, since the Telecom war is what is coming up, and it's going to be this KT roster, the COS one, against T1, who's, shown like just an okay level so far. What are your thoughts on KT and this potential matchup? Is there an upset potential for KT?
Oh, shit. I think it's tough because I do think that T1 is performing like in the right position. And I think like flow-wise, you need to have the right players mechanically to be able to break players like T1, because I do think in the end, instinct will kick in. Like Doran is way better than perfect. It's like Doran in the context of Akeen and Zeus, yeah, Doran is definitely like the weaker player. But in the context of everybody else, it's a different game. It was the same like when I was watching Nongshim.
Maligned, right? Because people only compare him to those like gods of top lane. But if you compare to other people, he's recently a champion many times, mate. Yeah.
For sure. It's just like looking at the better example maybe is like in Nongshim, Kingen had a pretty terrible last year, even though he went to Worlds. I think like his Aurora gameplay was fine, but it's like you see Kingen smurfing on like the weaker teams. Like he just like destroyed Morgan and made him look amateurish. And that's Kingen in the context of those games. So I think like going so far to expect an upset here, I wouldn't be able to, because I do think that still Faker and Owner were performing. Because if anything is going to be like the outlier for KT is just BDD. And I don't think he's much better or even better than Faker's form right now in terms of what he's showing. Because looking back at the KT series from last year, that was like BDD really trying to drag KT over the finish line. And I think what was so unique about that KT roster, as you mentioned yourself, is like Pioshik and Vero. Once where the moon is full and the wolves are howling, these guys can perform. Like when they beat GenG randomly in the regular season, can happen. I don't feel that same spice and magic when it comes to this roster, because I do think like a player like Kuz and Dioktam, while serviceable, also very predictable. I don't expect them to like break out into like some kind of a new ceiling in terms of where the career trajectory has been. So I think like it would be a big upset if T1 loses one, because it should be like a lock for them.
Yeah, the Beryl and Pioshik lineup was like a zombie, because you put them in the grave, they're dead and buried, there's no chance, there's no future for them. As you're walking away, a hand just comes out of that grave and grabs your foot. But here's the thing, they can kill you, Yamato, but they're still dead themselves. They can never live. They could never have actually succeeded or won the LCK or done anything. By the way, if they'd have actually gone to Worlds from that Game 5 against T1, it would have been an absolute travesty. If you think about what Dplus did, they'd have done the same thing. They'd have just been giving out free wins to everyone else and making the LPL look great. So in some ways, I only like them because of the upset factor, which, as you say, is like, that's just like you roll the dice in 1 out of 12 times or something that happens. But every other time, they just look fucking so shit. The problem with this KT roster for me, it actually is the player perfect that you mentioned. Here's an example of a player that is why you can't think that the lucid step up always happens. Look, he showed some potential last year too. He just hasn't become a better player necessarily. And unfortunately, the top teams have some very good players. Like as we're saying, even Doran is absolutely equipped to take care of a player like that. And even to just withstand a carry game from them. It's just not going to be that impactful. And the problem I have with KT is I think it has to be a top side of the map team. Because if you have Cos and BDD, right, they're already two of our best players on the team. If the perfect guy ends up being better, now we've got something we can work with at least. Because listen, I'll say it. I've said it the whole time from when he was in fucking Dplus back in the day to the LPL. I think Doc Dom is a fucking bomb, dude. I don't care what anyone says. Like in that FPX team, fucking Milky Way and then Life on Rumble were just carrying this guy to wins. Yeah, I bet at the end he would sort of be going like, it would almost be like the meme, like you're welcome. It's like, but you didn't do anything. It's like, yes, haha, like I'm away. Like, what was even doing in those games? Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be touched for here, but I do. I actually hate this player. I just don't like he's a good player, mate. And the problem is, you just said it earlier. This is a league where like Viper and fucking Ruler are going head to head, boys. Like, that's pretty good ADCs. I can't dock them. That's not gonna get it done.
I was like Bogdanovic, you know, this guy, you know, his role. It's like his highlight reel. It's like stealing Nashor with the Kaiser and like landing a bunch of like cool arrows.
If you
and that's all, you know.
Stealing the Baron as ADC, this is a role designed for pentakills, you idiots. Like it's true. It's got fuck all highlights of it. It's true.
It's like the Octave is like serviceable, you know, he's all right, but he's kind of like the Korean Hope, like the player Hope, not like the embodiment of hope, because that would be strange. I like he sets players up, but who do you set up on this team, bro? It's like BDD, bro, needs to bench like 300 kilos here. Like it's too much. Like there's too many facilitators here. It's like Jokdam. It's weird because he's started out like being the player that like did crazy like Samira things. Like it had band. He was a player that was very, very willing to brawl, but now he's kind of, you know, toned it down a little bit. I think he's serviceable. He's okay. I don't mind him being in the LCK, but it's not going to be a player that elevates KT into like being like an interesting team. Like it's just not the way, you know. Like, bro, when you mentioned like the top side, when you started with BDD, cuz it just reminded me that this team had that roster, you know, with Keen and, you know, the whole squad, you know, like with the hands and was it aiming as well, bro? Like that was a missed opportunity for them where they chose T1 in that first round. It's kind of crazy to think about.
that 1 year is the one. I mean, it broke Monty's heart because that was when he like believed in KT again. That was the year where they were like that close to actually doing a bunch of really impressive. They're even the ones, if you remember at Worlds, had the nightmare draw, still got out of Swiss, and then just ran straight to JDG, like the best team in the world who've never lost a best of 5. Like it's actually crazy. That is like a what if year, even if people don't realize, because the names maybe aren't as crazy as a lot of fans didn't know who Keen was necessarily, or they thought it was an old ass guy from Freak. They didn't know how good that roster was. Just unfortunately, it was like the ultimate choker roster. No, I'm with you. The real bomber of KT, if you were following them last year, is they're the team that thought they were going to like get like fucking Ruler or something, or Pays or something, and overpay them and have like a star ADC. And the problem is, in the end, you end up with Docdam. Guess what? Guess what, T1 fans? If you think you were hard done by trading Zeus for Doran, they thought they were going to get like a fucking Ruler or Pays, and they got Docdam. So exactly. Right. Is there any other teams we need to do for LPL? Do you want to pick someone else? Are we moving on?
I guess like How Alive, I guess.
We did just put them enough. True. Yeah, we did them against GenG. Let's do it.
It's like How Alive. I like it's not super interesting because I don't think it's like we shouldn't like throw them or like sell them just because he lost against GenG very early on in the season. I did think that he would hit the ground running a lot quicker though. I don't think that Zeus was performing well, but I have to say like the Delight Peanut engine is not looking like fully enforced, and also Zeka in that series against GenG, like that Corky game was disgusting. Like I've defended Zeka a lot in a lot of cases, and I have to fight against the memes, you know, because I want the narratives to land just right. But that was like an indefensible game. Sure, it's early in the season, right? It's a very, very good roster, and they are fortunate to be. Well, are they fortunate? They are not so fortunate. They are on the losing side with T1. So there's a big chance that we might have like an elimination match already between T1 and How Alive, which, when that time comes, which should be in approximately like 2-3 weeks if it comes down to it, I would imagine that How Alive like get their shit together. But it's like the start is relatively slow. I think the key thing for me is that Zeus looks good. Like Zeus still looks mechanically good. It doesn't seem like he lost his soul or something in the transition. Like he seems whole. So I think that's the main thing that I would point out about How Alive. Everything else kind of not in the right place just yet. Like I think just the Light Peanut, they just need to kick it into gear.
I'm with you. I actually thought, if anything, this should be the team that comes out with the highest baseline level. They should have so much they can carry on from last year. But actually, this is an example of a team also, by the way, where I actually just have concerns only in this first split because of Fearless. Like, even though I actually pointed out that's one of the strengths of Azir in T1, he could actually be a draft sponge and give you slack. The problem is, if you think of some of the other players in the team, right, two of the best players on this team in their role are Peanut and Delight. The problem is they're really good on 2 or 3 champions. If you give them those 2 or 3 champions, classic ones, then they're going to fucking carry the game. The Rakan, the Poppy, we all know that. Problem is in Fearless, that's not going to be as much of a strength. And then obviously, people gave Zika the credit last summer. He deserved it. He did play other champions. He showed it and more. But this is a guy where he has to be really good still. It's not like the rest of the team can just be awesome and he can just be okay. We have to have the summer, Zika, if we want to unfurl this potential and win the LCK. Because I'm with you. Luckily for them, when they come to potentially play that T1 game, I still favour them. I feel they're a better squad. They can potentially be better than Fearless. But I'm a bit alarmed too that they haven't hit the ground running a bit better. I hope this would be the team. If anything, I could have handled it more if they started awesome and then GenG ramped up, It's a bit concerning to me that they've just looked a bit all right at the moment. Like, I haven't seen the full power I thought of this. This roster on paper hasn't yet come into the server for me.
Agreed, yeah. I think like the KT game, well, it kind of went as expected. I just think it's like in terms of the sample size, we need to judge them off of that GenG series.
Yes.
And there were things that looked like mechanically off. And I think you made a great point about like the Fearless thing. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, actually, the way that they played some of these games, like Zika, was quite dirty. I think in many ways they need to clean it up if they're going to go forwards.
Well, that's true.
It's essential to be clean, isn't it?
It's very, very essential. It's like I came into this new year, Thorin, 2025, new me, new whatever, how people make resolutions. But I was already on the Mando train last year, baby. I've been smelling like Mount Fuji. I've been, this age-old quest. I remember growing up and you have this deodorant stick and you kind of want to be ready for anything. But these deodorant sticks that you buy in the shop, they belong in the armpits. You try to drag that stuff right in your grundle area, your nutsack, bro. It doesn't land right, bro. It's terrible. So it's like Mando offering me the whole body deodorant stick. That is my jam because now I'm ready for every situation, bro. Thorin, I walk down the street knowing that whatever encounter I'm going to be in, whether I'm going to be in a bus filled with people or I'm going to be in a situation where suddenly I don't know what happens. I'm in the nude for some reason. I know that I'm going to be smelling like Mount Fuji. Bourbon leather, all that good stuff. 72 hours protected. So for some reason, if I can't get home, lost my keys, I will still be smelling good no matter what I go through. No matter what I go through, I keep smelling good. It's clinically proven to just control your odor better than just a simple soap and whatever. 72 hours, I think. If you can't make it home in 72 hours, you're on a binge that long, you need to get some help. Mando should cover you in every situation that is realistic and normal. So get a track of your life if you're outside for more than 72 hours. And for those homies out there that want to join me and smell like Mount Fuji, the Mando starter pack is just perfect for all new customers. It comes with a solid stick, deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, like for example, the Midi body wash or deodorant wipes if you're on the run, like in that story that I made where you're outside for 72 hours, and make sure to keep these Midi deodorant wipes with you. As a special offer for all listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% of your starter pack. Use just code summoning at shopmando.com. That is shopmando.com. Please show support to our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe to grundle to everywhere else with Mando. Smell like Mount Fuji. Do the business, bro. Stay safe. 72 hours. Thank you, Mando, for supporting the show.
Yes, I will say as well.
How do you smell like?
Well, I actually
I've never met you in person.
The soap that they have, I actually think is really nice. Like, I actually find it quite a pleasant flavor. I don't want it to be some like weird flowery flavor. That actually has it's quite manly sense. Like you said, the bourbon smells. Yeah, I dig it. Also, 2 things there. One is I like the way you came up with the hypothetical. You were once locked out of your apartment for like 2 days. You could have used Mando back then. And then secondly, obviously, if anyone knows how to keep a clean sack, it's obviously Yamato Cannon.
100%. You know it, bro. Yeah. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the brand. They got to be clean.
Exactly. Right. Okay. Let's move on then. Should we just do LEC? Is that where we're going now?
Let's go LEC, brother.
Let's
go
do it.
and
So
see.
there's what's good is, first of all, obviously we are European and we have always embedded in this region. We know all the teams, etc. But I think actually this LEC season has already started. Bro, LEC is just going to be like this from now on. We have exited the era because even G2 is now down in the muck. We've exited the era where at the beginning of the season you can go, oh, these are 2 or 3 classic teams. They'll always be top 3. And bro, everyone's power rankings are just fucking throwing shit at a wall at the beginning of an LEC season. Nobody has any clue how that first week's going to go. Like, who the fuck thought G2 would be 0-2? Who had Karmine Corp winning? Who had GX, by the way, just sneakily just coming and even when they look shit, just winning the games, just keep winning the games. So already we've started, like, we're just in a silly fucking split already, mate. Like, it's going to be so up and down. And I feel like at week to week, people are just going to be, it's going to be like a crazy EKG machine where you're having a heart attack. So what were your initial thoughts? Who are we starting with? What team do you want to start with, mate?
I think the best one is just G2, right? Everybody expected this team to be great right off the bat. I think the main thing for me, right, looking at the changes they made, I do think that Labrov started very, very slow in that RL game against KC. Yep. I think that Skumon is getting way, way too much flack in the community because I do think that he has played very, very good games. Like, I think he's played very, very good games. I think like that game where he won was probably like the worst game he played individually, where Ismail was playing like the Nidalee and they fell behind the early game on him playing Zinzao. I think the Skumon, like leading up to that moment where they lost the dragon, which is for me not entirely only like a jungle thing. I think it's a team thing in terms of how you set up the burst and how you pull out the dragon. Like very similar, like some very small things that you can adjust to do better and potentially win that game. Because of course the enemy team KC got Hextech Soul in that moment. The main thing for me is that leading up to that moment, Skumon was like 2.5 levels ahead. He had many successful ganks. He was skirmishing super, super well. And I think that Skumon, as a player, I'm very, very hopeful for him on this G2 roster. The loss against BDS2, it's like that was a 6k gold lead where they threw at Atakan. And right now the game just swings so heavily. They make one mistake that is, of course, very, very glaring. But I'm looking at the details of how they achieve these game positions. So for me, at least on my end, Thorin, like I am not concerned yet about this G2 lineup because I think the way they lost still gives me hope.
I'll give you a weird angle as to why it's not actually panic stations if you're G2. One, you do still have caps. Like, caps is, again, if you want to use that Aaron Rodgers line, mate, a bad cap season is like top 3 player in the fucking league still probably. Like, he is just insanely good. So you almost know it's guaranteed he's going to come online and carry a whole bunch of these fucking BO1s eventually. The main issue for me is, I actually think, look, I definitely didn't predict they would start badly, but it's not as crazy a concept, Yamato, because the main concern I did have when they took those players out, the jungle support, was I do think Mickey X was part of your macro game. I think without him, that's not Labrov's game as much. Labrov's game, if you remember in BDS, is they just controlled the objective fights. Look, that's great, but I think this G2, in my opinion, I'm speculating here, I think the reason they made these changes is they tried for real to make hands upgrades. They just wanted to have a crazy skill team. And I think what they were, this is my pure speculation here, I think the problem is, the G2 that went to Worlds, remember how the summer and the season's finals went? They would have to like dig themselves out of a hole they got themselves in, sometimes even against worse teams, and then win like the hard way. And it looked like such fucking effort to win the game. So one of the problems is, I think in that G2 lineup, they've always idealized the first period of that squad in 2023, where remember, they used to just blast everyone off the server in the first 10 minutes. They just run over you in the bot lane. Nobody could stop them accelerating the game. And they just looked like it was awesome. Going into that MSI, everyone was hyped because it was like, fuck, maybe this team can be the one that sort of punches the Asian team in the mouth and just wins the game out, right? Like, that's never a position we've been in the West. We're always the one slightly behind in the game and the tempo and slightly worse players. So I think for me, they were trying to make a lineup like that. Because if you remember, when they first made that old G2 roster of last 2 years, Yike was instantly working. It immediately worked. Sure, they maybe did a Peter Don and sort of shielded him a little bit and didn't put too much pressure on him. So I think they thought Skumon's going to be like the new Yike. Because if people don't know, that really is the hype from the off-season, what I mentioned on the last episode. The BDS Academy squad that had this guy on was so good, people were saying it's better practice than most of the LEC teams. And in fact, that guy Skumon, and by the way, we'll get to him later, the Paris guy who's on BDS now, these players were in like high demand. People wanted these players for top teams, and people's expectation was Skumon could just be like some sort of prodigy at fucking jungle. He's just going to come out the gate blasting. He hasn't always. I don't think he played terribly, Yamato, with you. I give someone a break when they're playing in a team like this with massive voices, by the way. If people don't know, Caps not only has his own style of play, Hans Sam is a very demanding player. He definitely has like a certain style of how he wants to play and how he wants to get ahead. So I think when you look at their team, this is the team I could easily see, because I do think the hands on this team look insane. You give them a week or two, they're going to warm up, they're going to get good. They certainly will be a contender still, in my opinion, even though they're 1 and 2 now. That's why I say it, because on the scoreboard, they're not good. But I don't feel like this roster can be bad outright, It can't be bad. It could maybe be like take time to get together or not as good as you think, but these weren't stupid picks. My problem is more the other side. I just think things like put it this way, I have a very hard time ever letting like a fucking Mickey X score for my team if I have him there, because he's never had the Hylissang type seasons where he's really hitting every game. He has the ones where he has off seasons, he's not doing that well, or his field's not that great, but it's hard to let like generational players like that go. So I think it's more just that, yeah, you know what, that brother's got big fucking shoes to fill. He certainly was great on that BDS squad, but I also think people forget he had many years before that where he was up and down. He was just all right, or he didn't have the right lane partner. So it's not necessarily a plug and play roster like people maybe hope. People maybe just thought, again, on paper, we just win immediately. But there's a few concerns initially. But at the end of the day, mate, also, if I'm bedding in 2 new players, I kept Broken Blade, Caps, and Ansama like that. That trio is always going to have 2 out of the 3 be really good, surely. You're always going to have the carry threats.
No, I'm with you. I do think to emphasize the point about the switch up between Mickey and Labrov, I do think it's like people are always going to compare to how Mickey played in this week, because Mickey didn't play super well. Like he played fine, I'd say, but nothing like that stands out. But it's always something that you begin to notice as you just go deeper and deeper into a season, because I do think macro-wise of knowing where to be and how to get the most out of what the opponent gives you in terms of information, in terms of them showing on wards, on vision. I do think that Mickey as a player is very, very much in tune with the ideas that Caps and BB also enact on and pressure on in terms of how they side lane. Because I think it was very noticeable how conservative G2 was in like their macro approach. It was always like, oh, we're going to swap, we're going to trade sides. But in reality, there were moments where they were like stronger on the map, where the enemy kind of showcased that, oh, they're going into bottom side, and then can maybe cut through into them and you just match because the enemy can't take objective because they're on the same side as you, and you contest them to just make sure that you're not in any trade situation. But instead, G2 is taking like the safer route. And that's something that I wouldn't necessarily like associate G2 with, because I do think the big wins for them always were last year. This was the team that you needed to beat like 3, 4, 5 times in order to win. Like that's like just a hallmark of like a great team in your region, that they're going to figure out ways to just the opportunity where you slip on one wave, they're going to take and do so much off of it. And I think that magic is a little bit lost on me because of what I imagine. I'm with you that it is just the loss of Mickey. But at the same time, also the conversation of with Atakan in the picture and just being forced to be there on the objectives, the teams that maybe were worse macro-wise can force G2 into fights that they necessarily wouldn't want to take in the past. And I still do think that G2 will have to face that music too. Their Atakan setups, I'm sure this is something that they're going to like pinpoint and talk about, and of course break down, because if they can take that away from this week, I do think coming into the next week, I expect G2 to be a favorite in most matchups that they play still.
One other thing I'll just throw out there as well is, even though in some ways I think it actually takes away from the edge of Dylan Falco that everyone sort of has to Dylan Falco draft now because we're fucking Fearless draft and you have to be able to play a Yu-Gi-Oh! And have your trap card and all. You have to do all that jazz. At the end of the day, he is the master of it though. I also think if anyone can handle that and make it work for his team, one thing I was always impressed with of him is a really underrated quality. And I choose a coach, I figure you could speak to this, Yamato, which is in games, often people think about them very cynically. And if you find something that works, you just keep doing it till it doesn't work anymore. That was never Dylan Falco's game, mate. Even when G2 was on top and they were the best, he would always experiment. He would always like bring Broken Blade, bring in some different pick he wants to do, or he'd try like a crazy. By the way, he had some crazy Mickey X cooks like in fucking support that weren't even like meta champions anywhere in the world. Like this guy always had an open mind to like, is there something we can do that'll throw the enemy off, or they won't expect, or it's like something only we can get working. So in some ways, I also feel like he is suited to exist in the world of the Fearless draft. I think he will adapt. He's also just one of the best coaches, right?
Yeah. I think there's two things that come to mind is like facing off against Dylan Falco, like in different teams. I do think that what he always did so well was invite your comfort and prepare very specifically against it. I think there is like I lost, like I was on Fnatic and we lost against Schalke, and that was like the Dylan Falco roster, and that was like a big upset, and they kind of pinpointed us. And I heard the stories of how Gilius and his team like kind of prepared for us, and they were kind of bang on in terms of knowing how we operate. So I do think that he has good instinct in knowing what the enemy's comfort is and knowing how to attack that. I think it was similar when, like another example is when there was the famous like Soaz broke his hand and Whipple was subbed in, and our whole plan was to just attack Whipple as hard as possible. And I believe that this was the era of Young Buck and Dylan Falco working together. I assume that I have to give some credit to him too, because they also knew that was coming their way and they prepped for it. I think that the second part that I can add is that knowing G2's approach in terms of like champion assessment, I think that Rodrigo, the analyst, this was someone that I wanted to take away from Schalke when they made the move to G2, when Schalke was sold or disbanded, whatever happened. I wanted to get Rodrigo on our side, and Rodrigo is a person that I think that he does a great job of just casting a very, very wide net, making sure that every available data point they utilize, because there's a lot of good takeaways you can have from solo queue, because that's where you get like just the massive volume. And I think that with the players like Mickey, Caps, BB, it requires a very specific player. Like if someone's going to tell me, it's like, oh, I'm going to force Odoamne to play like this new champion, that's going to be like, what the fuck? It's like, that's not going to happen. You know, there's some players that just want to stick to 3, play 3, and that's it. And I think there's just like the right mix of crazy, because like Caps has always had that aura. It's like the famous like pick me Vayne thing, even though that Vayne game he kind of ran it down until he fucking eat Hansama into the wall.
What about if we're going to swap over? I'll tell you a team I want to talk about. It's the one that I actually thought was underrated coming into this split, and it is BDS, mate. Because first of all, I will admit I have an obvious bias here, which is I actually do think Striker's quite good. And I won't claim I'm like super close, but I've had some interesting conversations with him about League, and he has a very interesting like approach to like discipline, working with teams. By the way, especially actually like integrating like up and coming players, etc. Like I wasn't that surprised he picked up 113. That was his old guy from Karmine Corp a few years back. Similarly, I'm not surprised. Like, I think the smartest thing BDS did was this Paris move. If people don't know, or other people, again, because of BDS Academy, knew this guy was good, but BDS basically got him locked in ages ago, is the rumor. And supposedly, I mean, by the way, if you're Striker, that's the guy you ask for. You want Skewmont as well, obviously, but you can't have him in that scenario. So, like, in this scenario, of course, you want that player locked in. Like, he looked dope in that G2 game, mate. That was some real prospect. Again, not big name value if you don't follow ERLs, but this player looks legit. And so, I also am a big hyper of Irrelevant. By the way, even though Nuke looked dope with that shockwave, look at the work Irrelevant did in that play, mate. He is fucking, this guy's a stud. So I actually think this team's like a sleeper. Like for me, they look, I don't go crazy and put them like top 2 or 3 or something like that. For me, the top 2 and 3 should be G2, Fnatic, probably Movistar. These are the ones that logically should be like the top teams. But I think this team could be right there after that. Like this could be the squad that like takes care of the other teams. By the way, they already out fucking macroed G2 in the very first week. So I know people, the problem is Nuke's name isn't sexy. He doesn't have some crazy charisma around him, but he is a very solid player. Like, people think this is a diss. It isn't. I love Larson. I think he's a poor man's Larson. Like, he has similar skills. Like, his style's clearly the same. He's got a conservative aspect to him. Obviously, he's working with a new jungler now, but if you put him in the right situations, he can win games. He can carry games. And I think you just look at the squad. The carry positions are all good. I can't know how the jungler will work up. The support aspect looks good. This looks like another team where I think Striker's picked the right players. I think these are coachable players that no massive egos. Hopefully it can work. I actually think this could be like a sleeper squad. What are your thoughts on BDS?
I'm just comparing it to the previous year. Like I do think that they made an upgrade in top in terms of just consistency, in terms of knowing what the output will be. Because I think that if you look at the volume of games that you play throughout the year, I think that's like essential. It's like there's certain conditions where Adam thrives under that can be very good, like the World Championship for BDS. But again, in that contrast, I do think that a lot of the other teams around them like improve their rosters, and I don't think that the changes at BDS kind of keep up there. I think that Ice and Nuclear are very, very good core players, and I think that they can like stand tall against most of the players in the league, which I think is super, super important. Ice, I think he belongs like in the top 3 conversation, maybe not right away now, but like in general of just his body of work in last year. I think he's really, really good. I think Nuclear as well is someone that just has gotten better and better. My main concern for this BDS roster is just that I think that the curse of having too many players that are limited in what they want to play is going to, in the long run, especially like in a fearless format, is going to make them suffer. I think that Nuclear is very, very good at like the mages. Like when he's playing Azir or Orianna, I'm happy. I like to see him on those champs, similar to Larson, as you mentioned. I think that Paros showing that he can play the Seraphine side and the Rel side, I think that makes me like hopeful, because I think that if a player is willing to go beyond the scheme of like, oh, some supers should only play melee champs and that's it. It's like, if you already have like the rookie coming in and willing to, just go a little bit deeper, I think that's like a very, very good positive sign. But I'm worried when it comes to like a player like 113. It's like, if he's playing champions that aren't, let's say, Sejuani or Maokai, who does he become? Like in this series so far, I believe he played 2 Sejuani games and 1 Maokai game. He likes to play the tanks. I think he is a facilitator, doesn't farm much, but those champions, like you can target that very, very fast. And who does he become beyond that? I think the same thing for Relevant. I think he likes to stick to a few. As things progress, it's like if I'm preparing for BDS next week, I'm going to target 113 and throw him off comfort. I don't want him on Sejuani, don't want him on Maokai, because that really streamlines the game for them. It's like playing mage, tank, and carry on ice is a very, very easy approach to the game, which is like the BDS classic. But now with Fearless and also people viewing 113 in that light, I think this is something that will be attacked and will be a pain point for them in the long run.
Pick me another team then. Who else should we talk about?
Honestly, I think KC is quite an interesting one.
Yeah.
Like KC, I think that, the conversation about Kalist, right, is, I think regardless of how you put it in terms of the hype was built around, I think regardless of how he performed, regardless of how he played, he would have been overhyped. But I have to say, it's like, how he played against Koi was so damn cold. It was so damn cold in terms of like some of those situations where he's like getting Kalista ulted and like how he just moves and doesn't like instantly flash, instantly cleanse. There's no jitters at all. He challenges, like he basically like throws down the rag on the floor and it like wants to fight. He believes in the idea and the information that is on the screen.
Holloway, like center of the ring now.
Yes, okay. Exactly. That's what I was thinking about. But in the end, it became a rag on the floor. Okay. It's like there were moments where he was like posturing 1v4, knowing exactly like the limits of the other champions, similar to what I described before in terms of how the macro game has progressed. It's like knowing what you can get away with the context of your champ to everybody else and the timing of everything. It's like if the enemy is not like walking towards you, Kalist is taking space. He's posturing on you, and it's rare that we get like good Varus performances in Europe, and that is what like a good Varus performance requires. You need to posture and find the Q angles and take space when you can, because this is how you get the good Rs and the good poke. And I think just that's such a good sign for his future. I was always hyped on Kalist because his approach to the game isn't necessarily that he's right now in the moment that he played in the LFL that he was the best, but you just know that the way he approaches each situation, he's trying to mechanically squeeze. It's not like, oh, we're going to win if I just do this. No, I want to win doing the absolute most. I don't mind if I slip a little bit along the way, but in this pursuit, I'll become better. And I think over time, Kalist is going to be so monstrous, but having this start is just perfect. I think just that Vladi, Kalist, these two guys in terms of how they judge real-time information, in terms of how they fight and how they play mechanically, you just know these guys are going to have an insanely good future in this league.
Yeah, and also, even though the roster was never bad on paper, they've hit the ground running. Like, most of the parts you wanted to look good have looked good. By the way, Yank looked good straight out the gate. I actually did think that was an obvious player that, like, it's a bit like the example of Jean on BLG. It's like, first of all, why is he gone? Like, I thought he was doing totally fine in the team. It's almost like you've gone for some weird, we want something else from our squad. And then two, he's clearly a player where when he's on a team that doesn't have massive names, he can potentially be unleashed as well. Like, this guy actually is clearly a very good player. I also think the Vladdy guy did show last year on the scuffed Karmine Corp. Like, he clearly had carry games. Like, for me, him and Jackie's were the two players that sort of came in way too late, but actually showed they were viable players who should be staying. And then Kalist has lived up to the hype, except obviously no one can. I know what you mean by that. The problem is when you've overhyped them, nobody could. You'd have to come in like Prime Uzi Eye on game one. He didn't, but I'll give you this. If you're someone that everyone's telling me is going to be like a stud carry ADC, then actually show me kind of like a nuanced Varus game in week one. That impresses me. That isn't the sort of player you expect to be the stud, balls to the wall, give me this and I carry the game. Like, but I know what you mean. It might sound weird to a fan. There's actually a player, if anyone follows Counter-Strike, there's a bit like this. I'll give a quick example without going too far. There's a player who plays for NIP. He's a Ukrainian AWPer called Wrinkle, right? And here's the thing. He's not one of the best AWPers right now, Yamato. He's not like anywhere close to the Monasees and the Zewus of the world. But what's awesome, and the reason why me and a lot of the experts are really interested in this player, is even right now as like a really rookie, inexperienced player, he plays like he thinks he's already simple. Like he already thinks he's the best player. And what's awesome about that is no one does that. You know this. Like, as you said, when you're on a low level, you play to the level of your opposition. That's what normal humans are like. I like players that play on the edge and believe, like Caps did when he came in the LEC, like, oh, if not like now, in 6 months, I'm going to be the best, or I'm going to be the second best, or I can compete with the absolute best. He's not going to come in and see Hans Sama and then be, oh, it's Hans Sama. Like, I want the guy that goes for it and thinks he's as good. So that aspect clearly is there to his game. It's why I actually think it's sad that they overhyped him, because if anything now, if the team does badly, I think people will probably blame this guy. Was actually, it does look like he's had a fabulous entry to the league. And then I'll throw it as well. Everyone is always going to be down on Targamas because of how the last few years have gone. But I don't think they're just idiots in this team. I'm sure they had other options for support. There's got to be some reason they've chosen to keep him here, or something they think they're going to offset. And at least thus far, it's been all right. It hasn't been a major problem. He's not. The problem we always have in League is I feel like this is actually why, by the way, I think all the Faker fans really get mad at us, Yamato. It's not just that we're like pointing out Faker isn't the best. It's that they think because they keep saying he's the best all the time and we're saying he's not, that we're saying he's shit. So the problem is anytime someone isn't up to the expectations, especially if they're not a top player, everyone wants to dismiss them as like subhuman trash who can't press a key on the board or something. Like, look, certainly I have heard the comms in 2 different teams now where Targamas did not talk. It's like he didn't know the chat server was there. But I'll tell you what, he can clearly play some League of Legends when he's in the right spots, though. What do you think of that aspect of this team? Because obviously that's what a fan's always going to look at on paper and think is going to be the bottleneck or something. Is it going to matter? If he follows Kalist's lead, does it matter? Can it work?
I do think like the big check mark that I was looking for in the KC games was just like how would the Ike and Targamas cooperate? And in many moments, it's like when Targamas was playing melee supports, like with the Sejuani game, they were taking control over the map together. So like those ideas are like clearly spoken about. And I know that Ike also mentioned in the interview because he was asked like how is the communication with this team? Is that do you carry a big responsibility? And he said that Targamas talks a lot more than like people make it out to be. I do think, like, from my experience working with Targamas, like, the main thing for him was that it's like he would say things, but if he thought it was obvious, he didn't feel the need to say it.
Oh, right.
And I think in a lot of cases, like, this was something that I was trying to tap into and, like, unleash because he is very, very knowledgeable. Like, Targamas is very, very knowledgeable. Like, he always had, like, a lot of input when it came to, like, draft conversations and so forth. And I think that with players, like, knowing how they functioned with Kalist, the most surprising thing for me when they explained to me like how Kalist was in like when they were competing in the LFL and so forth was that Kalist was the one as the rookie coming into the team, 17 years old, was demanding shit from people.
All right.
Like, he was pushing people to play solo queue. He was demanding shit from people. Like he like hearing that from the rookie that just comes into the team is like, oh, what the fuck are you doing? Just play some solo queue. I think that's like insanely, let's say, based. You know, it's just based. And Vladdy the same way. It's like knowing how he communicates in Champions queue and looking at the pretty much just like the voice comms, which are very limited, but Vladdy seems to also communicate like the right things and seems to keep like a very, very calm tone throughout the game, which I think is super, super cool because you don't, like the big question was like, who's going to communicate with this team? Yike was on G2, Targamas doesn't speak much, and you have 2 rookies and a Korean in the top lane that of course is limited in English, but I think in my mind, Kalist and Vladi are underrated in that aspect, and I'm very, very happy to see that Yike and Targamas are actually like actively like working together when they are playing the game, which is just such a big deal, you know. Just how they put down vision makes sense, how they move together makes sense. It means that they like have a very, very clear idea in mind, because this was the main concern for KC.
Yes. And then obviously, if people don't remember, people just forget sometimes. This was 2 years ago, the team that was in the LFL with the players that later you got in Karmine Corp. Obviously, the Rhea guy was their coach. So again, this is someone going for comfort, and they know how these players operate, and they have a pre-existing synergy potentially. So that's looked good so far. Because I do think the problem is people just take, ever since the XL season, like I say, people have just decided Targamas is never allowed to ever be good at League of Legends again. I'll just point this out. It wasn't like someone else pressed the keys when he was in G2. He did do all those roams and get all those fucking sick players off. Like, there's clearly something to his game. He's just, to me, he's one of those players that's like a bit of an enigma. Like you're saying, if you notice, it's not, you notice, you didn't make a point about how he plays or skill. You were talking about things like, how does he communicate? What, like, does he need someone to lead him? What does he want? Maybe he doesn't communicate when he thinks you should know what he means. In some teams, they want you to calm everything. So yeah, it's just one of those scenarios where, again, it's environment. It depends who the other players are. I always think an underrated part of League is, in the same way as a great team is more than the sum of their parts, you need the other players also influence how each player in a team plays. It's why you never really can. Put it this way, it's why if one player's insane and then the rest of the team's complete shit, they probably are just insanely good at League of Legends. I think League isn't like Counter-Strike. In games like Counter-Strike, you can get yours, bro. You can kind of play your spots, shoot the guys and get the guns again. Like, you'll have chances if you're a truly great player. In League, team environment, how other people play, how people shot call, these are massively influential over how good someone's going to look.
100%. Like, we had the conversation, right? In there was the question is like, who are players that kind of raise the floor of a team? Like, that Excel roster was like just filled with players that are like matching up to the level of the team.
Yes.
Like the Targamas as a player, it's like where he had the most success, right, in the past was when he worked with Jankos and Synkrov. Very, very demanding players that, of course, know how to drive a game. And I think that as long as you understand like the person, it's like we took a very big risk with putting Bo and Targamas together, but they both kind of needed someone to be capable of like driving the game, and to make Bo and Targamas work together was something that required a lot more time than I was given at the time, of course. I think
for you, Mato. Right, obviously, people do forget that there was the Bo factor in this as well, right? We used to have a show in England. It was a celebrity show where you'd bring people on who were famous, or they were like sometimes members of the public. It was called "Can't Cook, Won't Cook." So the idea is you either just don't cook, so you don't know what you're doing, you have to do a recipe, or you just can't. You just shit at cooking, and they would make you something simple you could make yourself, right? Basically, the problem there is that's what Bo and Targamas was. There was can't speak English and won't speak English. That's my joke for you. Again, maybe that's just an if you know then you know sort of joke there, Yamato. We'll leave that one for the fans. That's something for the deep law. So okay, what about though expectations for Karmine Corp? Obviously, it's only week one, but like, what are your expectations for this team? What would be like a good split? How much potential do we have here?
I think that if they managed to break into top 3, I think that would be like a massive achievement. I think it's largely dependent on the form of like Fnatic and G2, but currently we have very interesting top 5 teams in Koi, GX, KC, Fnatic, and G2. I think these teams can be very competitive, and I think that there is like arguments to be made why somebody might land above anybody else, right? In that like top 3 bracket. Like, I could still see, like, I'm a big guy when it comes, like, I'm big on like fucking experience. I believe in like the players of Fnatic and G2 to just like see the paths kind of in front of them as the season kind of unfolds, and knowing, you know, how to deal with the challenges that come. And I think that's like crucial. I think that ties into like coaching staff experience too, right? And I imagine that G2 and Fnatic is going to break into like be in that top 3. I think anything less would be like an underachievement, of course. But KC could definitely make an argument there, because one thing that really stood out to me is just their prep work. You know, it's like BO1s are very brutal, but I think that in terms of their draft approach, there was many strong ideas from the get-go. It's like the draft against G2, they understood the theme that the enemy was going for, and they dropped into 4-5, got the Ezreal Alistar as well, which was super good. And also like that Koi victory was just like a strategic victory, because the enemy team had like the Klister Renata, and then they went Zinzao Ari with Kisanda. That's a composition that is very, very weak against the poke and the disengage, and you could see how KC real time really leveraged that. Like they were never in like these confrontations with this enemy draft. They were always poking, and this was of course the Varos game that we spoke about before. So I think in terms of what they are strategically, I think is a very, very good place, and there's a lot of hope and potential here for sure. I think LEC as a whole, just like the top 5 teams and the new names we have coming in, is just super exciting. It just feels so refreshing.
Put it this way, this is one of the few times I also feel a bit validated in not knowing some of the players from the ERLs. Because I always tell people, I only watch the really big games or the EU Masters playoffs of the ERLs. So crucially, the way I know if someone's going to be good usually is my friends who are coaches or other players tell me, oh, actually, watch out for that guy. Oh, this guy should be on the top team. You know, they give you the hype behind the scenes. So you get that of the Callisto, you get that from a Skewmond, you get that back in the day from a Yike, etc. These players, when they're coming through, they get that hype, and it travels out. It's like ripples in a pond. I'm at the edge of the pond, and it gets to me. And if it gets to me, that means there's real hype around this player. So one of the problems I have to say, Yamato, is I always do default, even though League is a bit different now, I prefer the devil you know than the devil you don't. I'll always side, essentially, like I said about the example of like Skewmond. I would have stuck with what Yike was. I thought that was certainly good enough. It wasn't like a bottleneck to the team. It wasn't the reason you were losing the games. I think the gamble for Skewmond there is you're gambling on the world. You're gambling he's going to be way better even than Yike. So that's hard to do. So I have to say the 2 rosters that I looked at in this offseason was like, I don't expect anything from these rosters. So if they know better than me, I'll tip my hat to those coaching staff. They just get something I don't. Because when I looked at Vitality and Heretics rosters, I was just like, bro, I don't hear hype about most of these players. Like, even in the games I watched this week. Look, the mid laners had a game or two that was all right. I'll give them that, right? But I also think you look at some of these players, fucking hell, this is what happens when you put a bunch of rookies and new squads together, mate. It can just come out a bit pear-shaped, as we say in England. It just doesn't work out necessarily, or it's clearly not what you were going for, etc. Like, I mean, do we even get into it here? If I want to say something specific about Vitality, people make that joke about Humanoid. Like, how's he keep his job? How the fuck does Hylissang keep his job? Does he just... Is the joke... Right, here's my joke for you. Supposedly, when Jankos and Vander played in that team with fucking Ryu, that H2K team, there's a joke that every time Ryu left the room, they would just put on his computer that video of the Faker 1v1 Zed moment. So when he came back in, that was just playing on his PC. Like, what the fuck? At this point in time, Hylissang must be having like fucking barbecues every weekend where you get there, he's got your favourite beer ready for you, nice and cool, chilled beer, sir. He comes around, you know, hors d'oeuvres, anyone? Hors d'oeuvres? Which for gamers would just be nuggies, tendies, and fucking pizza slices, but we'll pretend this is a party. He comes out, and then what he does, he goes, now we're just going to watch the best of Hylissang. And he pulls up those awesome games from season 8, season 9. He's showing all the great... He's even showing only Spring Split, bizarrely, of when he was on your team. I don't know why that would be. He's just showing all the greatest moments. He's showing when he's Pike, mind gaming, fucking Yuyangia. He's all over the place, you know. He's fucking making Mickey X just like trade flash early in lane with Reckless. All the classics. And you're just going, oh, that Hylissang, he's a hell of a guy, isn't he? Anyway, what's up? We have to play League of Legends now. Okay, cool. Right. You're still there though, Hilly, right? Yeah. No, I'm ready. I'm not only ready, bro. I'm so back. I'm so back. We are so back. He is not so back. He is so bad right now. Like, I don't know why. I don't want to hate on him. He's one of the all. What I hate about this is this guy is the shy of LEC, Yamato, because his peak was unbelievable to an extent that it did actually blow people's minds. But holy fuck, can the floor for this guy's game also be insane? Like, and also because he has that green light, he has like some the shy-esque criminal ints. Like, he has some more, bro. I don't even know what they were doing in that Movistar game where they had all those like fucking... They were just getting caught by Yone ults. Like, what even is this game? Like, I don't know, mate. Give me some thoughts on this. You've coached him. Who the fuck is this guy? I don't get it.
Well, it's tough because I'm like, looking at Hilly's career. It's like every team he's been on before Vitality made finals. Like, even what he did in the Unicorns of Love days, he warped the whole super role. Like, the whole conversation was about Yellow Star back then, but Hylissang was dangerous. Like he made unicorns of LoL rosters like be competitive when they really shouldn't. It was like him and Vigichachi really smurfing out of their mind, and then they had like a lot of junglers come and go. Like they were changing junglers like damn underwear on that team. Like he was laning with a man called Vardags, and for those who watched back then knows that if like I could sub in and play better, right? And Hilly, it's like there was even a time where I would even consider him like maybe 2018. Like there were moments where he was in the conversation of being like the best support in the world. But not only like best support in Europe. Yeah. It's like best support in the world. Like his run in 2020, 2018, absolutely legendary. I work with him too. And what Upset and Hilly did together, I think what they achieved in terms of like a peak level in 2021, I think that
best in the West, that was a legit name. Yeah, they also kind of resurrected that title, right? They were the best.
It's like I don't think that Upset and Hilly, I don't think that any other bot lane in terms of like level has like reached that high. I like in my mind. Obviously, there's a context of what's going on in the year, and like Reckless Hilly was insane, and Yellow Star Reckless was insane, and so forth. And there's a legendary bot lanes, but it's like these guys, when we're scrimming, were competing against Gumayushi Kiria. They were competing against like Viper Mako. They won Worlds. It's like they were competing against the best. Like when we scrim against Damwon, we went 8-1 because like they just completely. What they did to Ghost was like illegal. Like Ghost was like ATC is down, we'll just solo lose the game, and like Damwon, like we like they were like sitting across from us. Like we knew we were getting to them, you know, like because they had the office right, like the hotel room on the other side in Iceland. It was like Hilly, fantastic play, but it's like in this Vitality roster, there's just it's like there were Hilly mistakes where it's like if you ask Hilly, he can be like, oh, it's like I saw this moment. If you guys play with me here, then you guys can see it, and there's something to work on. And like I'm in tune with that Hilly way of thinking, and I can always see that in his approach. But there's just been so many things where it's so far removed from anything remotely useful in some of the decisions that he's making that is very, very painful to see. Like last year when they were like competing for playoffs, had like good game positions. There was like this Rakan game that I remember where he just like pressed ult and nobody was close and just ran into the enemy and died. And it's like, what the hell happened? Or even this last weekend where he played like Leona and just walked into the enemy team, died, traded 1v1 with like Ezreal on mid. It's like, I don't know how to justify it. It just seems like Hilly, maybe there was a point where Hilly didn't understand his own magic, and now he's trying to refine it because often, like the genius of Hilly was that he could always like break down why he did things, and in some cases he would just say, "Nah, Yamato, I was just inting," and I feel like it's just gone too far into the other direction. And I think that Hilly, as a player, he got away with taking it very easy in off seasons in the past, where he would come back into the team and he would like be given weeks to find himself again because that was just his process. You would trust the Hilly process. But I think somewhere along the line, as the game becomes more mechanically intensive, players get better and ideas become more streamlined for everybody, and things that were unique to you is just a standard part of the game, you then realize that the hours you didn't put in kind of add up. And I wonder if that's what's just at play now, because you know something that Caps did that was unique last year is going to be the standard of this year, and Hilly's magic is just not the same.
Well, I knew I could rely on Yamato Cannon to find the upside to Hylissang's play. And you know what? There's actually an app called Upside that's sponsoring this episode of Summoning Insight. So the most valuable app that you can have on your phone in 2025 is Upside. No other app out there gives you the power to earn more like Upside does. Whether you're filling up your tank, going out to eat, or shopping for groceries. Don't lose to the shop, shout out LS. The Upside app gives you opportunities to earn cash back on every purchase. Necessary purchases that you would have had to make anyways. Top earners on Upside are getting as much as $300 cash back every month. The free Upside app gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, dining. There are over 100,000 gas stations, grocery stores, and restaurants on the Upside app, ensuring that cash back is always just around the corner. And yes, it's real cash back. No confusing rewards, points, or credits. Just actual money you can transfer straight to your bank account. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside, then pay as usual with a credit or debit card. Follow the steps in the app and get paid. People can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside than any other product. This includes loyalty programs and credit card rewards. People know you have those points and you get them for certain things. $1 million cash back is being earned by users each week. Download the free Upside app and use promo code summoning, you know how to spell it, to get an extra 25 cents for every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's an extra 25 cents for every gallon on your first tank of gas using promo code summoning. Maybe the upside of Hylissang was he just got loads of gas and threw it out there and then threw a match onto it. And then that's how Vitality played. So thank you to Upside. Thank you to anyone, especially to people mainly in America who use this. I hope you got the clue by the dollars and the gas sign and all that jazz. Anyway, I will say this, which is one last detail actually on Vitality. It's my last thought, which is this. I just really feel sad for Kazi now because he's one of those players I'll totally give it up. Look, it's a bit of both. It's both that the game changed to be more his style of ADC. I do think in the past he did sometimes make some bizarre, weird moves himself if we're going back 5 years or 4 years or whatever. But I also think now, because he's seen the best of Hylissang, the problem is, just like Yamato, every person I know who's played or coached Hylissang, they are in an eternal love affair with this guy. They can never, it's like Brokeback Mountain. They just can't quit him. They can't quit him, bro, even if he's fucking them. That's actually a straight fire joke there, but whatever. It's all good. So the point is, I just don't know why Kazi keeps playing with this guy, because I actually think Kazi is just like the sleeper banger of the LEC for like 3 years now. Like in the last few years, he's just an excellent player. Aside from that silly Ezreal move where he got fucking caught by the Yone or whatever, aside from that, I genuinely think he plays a very good level, even in spite, by the way, of whatever Hylissang does. So I get that he loves Hylissang and he thinks he understands him. I just wish he didn't play with him. I wish Hylissang played on a different team and Kazi had a different support. Like if I'm Kazi, I'm like, bro, can't I have Mickey X? You know what I mean? Can I see what I could cook with that? I just don't think this bot lane's it for me. It's just not it for me.
It's very tough, you know. Like to just, I guess, to switch to the conversation about the newcomers. Like I do think like Nako, right? I do think like mechanically interesting. I didn't expect much from Chayek, and he did have like a really good Talia game, so that's like a good sign. I just, in terms of seeing this roster ever breaking into the top 5, I just don't see it happening. Like if they manage to become 6th, that's already like an overachievement. But yes, it just looks so grim from the position we're in, and it's just that looking at the issues of Vitality from last year, the changes that they made don't solve those problems in my mind. Like I know the Viteo and Photon, they're very like mechanically they can play, but they play in a very individual way. So they don't like tune into like the ideas or maybe how Hilly wants to approach things. And I can see the angle there, like getting rookies to like buy into one identity. But you bring in rookies to solve your macro issues. I think that's always like a very tough task. And I think looking at you know, just Mac and Pad, you know, like these are guys that you know, had a very strong reputation for what they did in Mad Lions, and everyone thought that their acquisition, like Vitality's acquisition of them, was like a steal, considering Mad Lions like rebuild. But now it's like this whole thing is kind of losing steam. You know, it's like eyes on this coaching staff to really prove themselves again, because you know this is the time to do it. You know, it's like this is your project. You need to prove once again that you're capable, and it just wasn't. It is 2021 wasn't just like a perfect storm of just like humanoid peaking, Elioya being a fantastic player, and just you know, the LEC being very weak in that year. We need to see, you know, the machine, the Mac and Pad machine do some work.
Oh, I will say the biggest upside for them is if this lineup has any success, they will gain all of their rep back again. Because actually, one of the problems they had is the same problem Peter Dunn had last year. These are guys who've not only made their name, but they'll tell you, I want the rookie who's malleable and I can shape him and work with him and make him the problem is they both just got chances to have big name rosters. And part of you feels when you've never had the big names, like, I want to have a go at that. I don't want to always be the guy working with the lesser player. Or I want to know what it's like to pilot the best players. The problem is, and this is a classic coaching problem in sports, is there are two different distinct camps of coach. There are coaches who are good with like lesser pieces and they put them together and make it work and find a way to like reclaim an old player and get a player who hasn't been there yet in a good spot. There are then the coaches that just work with the absolute best players in the world. Like their skill is like how you manage egos and how you make star players compromise for each other or fit together. And the problem is you can't just assume a good coach does both or is an expert at both. If you've never had the experience working with the big names, You might get thrown into the deep end of the pool, then you might drown. You might not be able to handle them. If you're Peter Dunn, I can't even imagine what convos are like if you've got fucking Yankos and Wonder and Perks in a room. Like, bro, that's not the same as when the little wide-eyed rookies looking up, yes, Mr. Dunn, what do I have to do to play an LEC? They're like, tell me something, bitch. Like, what? Not really, but there's that atmosphere in the room. So I do think Mac and Pad, we all did the assumption of, if they did that with like the not that great rosters, this is like star names, they're going to win the LEC. And then sadly, it didn't happen. In fact, it was worse than their rookie rosters and the ones where they were bringing people up. So I'm with you. Like, even though they tanked their rep last year, if they can't do anything, I'll give them mad respect for this roster, because it's not a roster I expect anything from at all. I'll tell you what we'll do. We're not going to do every team. Let's do the other two, right? I would normally have said fuck GiantX, but if you win 3 games, you get to be talked about. So we will talk about GiantX, Fnatic, and Movistar. Because these are all teams with like real potential, it looks like. Then we'll do a little bit of LTA and then we'll fuck off after that. So how about we start with GiantX, the 3-0'd. Now, here's the thing. There has been a lot of hype, I notice, if you follow the interviews behind the scenes, especially from GiantX themselves, implying actually that they really do think that this is going to be like a sleeper roster, that fans are sort of like not expecting how good this team's going to be. They've actually supposedly got a good floor. I've already told people in the past that when I did my Reflections interview with Giotto, that alone hyped me, bro, because he didn't just say like, oh, I want to be in the LEC again, or, you know, I want to win because I didn't win when I had Origin or something. Dude, he told me, I think one of the coolest reasons ever. He told me, now I have a son, I don't want to just play in ERLs and him never know I was a great coach. I want to win the LEC and show him like, look, son, that's who your dad was. That's a fucking gangster motivation factor. It's actually why I often think, you know, when people go, oh, that player's not going to be as good now because he's just had a kid. Bro, that's a reason to be good. That's a reason to be fucking amazing, so that he has something to look up to. So I fuck with that angle. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of this roster of players, but I tell you what, even though they went 3-0, I said it earlier, I do think the first 2 games were a bit... the third game was pretty good, though, but I tell you what... Being able to win scrappy, not that great games is a great sign for a team. Like, we're talking about teams that almost won a game. This team just walked the first week. What do you think?
No, like I just wanted to tag on like what Giotto mentioned in the interview, where he just made the bold claim that G2 is not going to make it to the World Championship. I figured we should also talk about that before.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
I like to make such a statement. It's like they're not making it to Worlds after 1 week. It's like I get that you see shit in scrims, right? You have more information. He has more data. I get that. Maybe he has information on the other teams and he expects them to just be better, but regardless of what he knows, to count out G2 from this point in time with the names that they have is just like a crazy fucking take. I think saying that after 1 week and knowing how turbulent and crazy a whole year can be in terms of changes, roster changes, like player fluctuations and performances. G2 right now, in terms of where their coaching staff is and some of the core players, this is like a proven quantity that even if they don't make it to the World Championship at the end of the year, I still think it would have been a really fucking crazy thing to say at this point in time. I don't know what your take is.
I'll give you a mad angle on this. Here's why I think it's low-key genius. Because as you've said, the last few years, by the way, shout out to G2 for that marketing campaign where it's like no one's perfect and it's them winning every split except that one that Mad Lions won on those posters they put on. Whoever did that, that is genius. That is hilarious, because what you've done there is like, we basically are perfect, but we just lost one time. Like, what is it, perfect G2 marketing? It's a great flex, isn't it? The point is no one else can do that flex in LEC or LCS, mate. So that's already gangster. But I do think this is why it works as a genius power play, because it's a mind game. That's what I actually think it is, Yamato. Here's why it works. Because as you say, everyone expects, I just did it 25 minutes ago or something. Everyone expects G2 to get it together and at the very minimum be a contender, if not win splits and be at Worlds. So if they're already going to be really good anyway, well, you can only get the shit beaten out of you, mate. You can't get the shit beaten out of you 50 times harder. Like, you just lose the game. But here's where it's genius, Yamato. Since they did start 1-2, and they actually went 0-2 initially, if in the next week they drop 1 or 2 games again, fans are going to keep referencing that. That's going to become a narrative. Before, it would have taken a while. We'd all say, they'll get together. People will start going, hey, maybe Giotto the prophet, did he know something we don't? And actually, here's the best part, Yamato. That could even get in G2 players' minds. It's like, this guy's talking... By the way, I'll guarantee they're not just losing every scrim. This guy's talking shit on us. Like, we're the fucking shit. Mate, in a way, I love that. Like, I'll give you a great example of MMA. If people don't know, one of the most underwhelming MMA fights ever was when Conor McGregor had that title fight against Jose Aldo. Because if you don't know, Jose Aldo at the time was the GOAT of that division. He was one of the best fighters ever. And in fact, one of his strengths, by the way, was he could fight every type of fight. He could fight a fight against a wrestler or like a stand-up fight. But what's mad is, I'm not joking, I really do think that because Conor McGregor relentlessly talked shit on this guy in every aspect and did all that stuff, stealing the belt and disrespecting himself, I think that did make Jose Aldo just lose his cool at the beginning of the fight and just go straight, which wasn't his style at all. People don't know he's more like a counter puncher and get him build up in a fight. I think in a weird way that did sort of make Jose Aldo make an opening that was great. In the same way, by the way, if you're G2 and you play against this team, you're going to be horny as fuck. It's like 5 fakers in the server. You know that famous concept that every Western player, when they first play a faker, they're all just trying to kill him like it's solo queue. It's like that age-old clip of fucking Ninja when he was on Fortnite that looked like a nightmare to me, where he drops into a Fortnite server and every kid's like, it's Ninja, get him! And it's like 100 people trying to get him, bro. It's like, what even is this? Like, that G2 is going to be so horny to shut these guys' mouths now. And by the way, I'll just seed it early on. My God, can you even imagine if GX actually beats G2 in the next game? If they play them, Yamato, let me look, when do they play G2? Oh, they play them on Monday the 27th. If GX beats G2 in that game, take that fucking narrative, and that's a fireworks show. That light the fuse, because that's going off. That's going to be... And it's going to be spicy as fuck for that. So I love it, because in a weird way, I actually do think the problem in the league is it's all everyone's just going, well, G2 will probably win, but we could be second best. No, fuck that. I want someone to even be like, not only are we the best, G2's not even fucking good this split. Now let's see what they do with that. Let's see how do you handle that disrespect. Believe it or not, Yamato, it's crazy. Thorin would fuck with someone who believes disrespect can be a tool to stimulate sort of conversation. Now, oh, it's weird. I fuck with it. I love it. I love the arrogance of it, bro.
No, I can see, bro. That makes a lot of sense. Honestly, I like the angle. It's like. From my side, now that I think about it, it's like in a lot of interviews, usually I use it as a tool to communicate to the players indirectly, because maybe like, as you mentioned, it's like having that fear coming into those games, thinking that somebody is just better than you, has a really, really big psychological impact. So I'm bought in, bro. I like the angle. I like the angle a lot, man. I think it makes a lot of sense, bro. Like if Gianotto is like playing fucking chess like that, bro, I respect it a lot. I respect it a lot.
That's the thing, bro. I'm just going to say, remember, he is Portuguese. He's taken a page right out of my boy Mourinho's book on that. That is just the shit where what the genius of that move, remember, is when Mourinho used to have those mega teams, you didn't even want to beat their players. You just want to beat fucking him, because you knew he'd be talking crazy in the press and downplaying you and talking about, oh, you're not good enough tactically or you're overrated. So it's actually even a great angle, because in some ways, here's the other thing. It also sort of takes the pressure off the players, because now it's Giotto that's going to get flamed if he's wrong. They're not going to flame the players. By the way, the players are fairly likable. Who the fuck doesn't like Jordan and fucking Jackies? These are just good players, mate. Like, these are just legit guys, right?
No, for sure. I'm bought into the angle. I like it, Thorin, man. As talking about the players now, right? It's like Lot was the guy that I didn't know anything about, and this guy, damn solid. Like the way he fights, the way he lanes, it's like this guy has potential. Like that was a big question mark for me in terms of how this roster would function, because my read on GX was instantly that with the player combination, a bot lane that has played together for so long, with where Jack was last year and how good we know he can be. Like I think last year was absolutely phenomenal. This year as well, like watching him in Champions Queue, watching his POV, I just know this guy is going to be damn good. It's like the conversation should be like, it's like ramping up the Jackies, Vladi, like they're surpassing like Humanoid in terms of how Humanoid is a player, right? Which we can talk about more when we come to Fnatic. But just GX, I thought they're going to hit the ground running because they have like Closer, who is a role player, very, very specifically likes to be the facilitator, was very important for KC. And how I hear the conversation about like Closer in terms of how he is for team, that he is very, very good for the social aspect of the team, like socially very, very strong, and like is there to like elevate players, because I think that's like in a lot of teams they have like energy vampires, like players that are kind of drain team of the energy, and then there's players that give energy like to the team. Like some players are very tough to deal with, that can be tiring, and then there's the opposite, and Closer is one of those guys that I've heard many times. It's just like a giver. And I expect the GX to do good from the get-go. I do agree that like the first 2 games were kind of like iffy, but I think that it showed a very, very good side to like their mechanical skill, because in order to come back in some of those moments, the way they team fought, like some of those moments from June, some of those moments from Jackie's, even Noah, I think that's like a really, really big great sign, because it means that the ceiling is very, very high for this team. Like seeing now, like with the changes to some of the players that went from the top teams, I think it was kind of expected that like Noah, June, Yike are going to do better in their next team. It's like you join a very, very big team from the get-go, and there's a lot of pressures there, and you're going to be put in a very, very specific box, but at the same time, you're absorbing a lot of knowledge, right? And then when you walk away from those situations, you have the opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself. And even though with all that being said, I like how Noah is playing confidently, but none of that is going to matter until they play like their final game of the season. How is Noah going to look like then? Because Noah did look like a stud as well in the beginning for Fnatic, and he dominated regular splits. Like that first regular split in summer when he joined in, he was a demon on the Aphelios, and it was goddamn like fantastic, and he couldn't really find that magic again, I feel like. So we will have to just pay attention to how this GX roster progresses. But that game against KC, that was like a closer masterclass. They really dominated the map, and they played that game out beautifully. That's like the nature of best of one. It's like you have to kind of extract what you can from them, because sometimes they don't offer as much. But that game 3 makes me hopeful for GX.
I'm with you, by the way. I actually think, even though he obviously did get some hype in the summer, I think the Jackie's guy was slept on. He's a player that came in as a rookie on a dysfunctional team, split on split, looked better and better and better, could actually, by the end, be a real win condition. Like, if he was playing a BL3 or BL5, you knew this guy would have one game where he would carry against almost anyone. You give him the right champions, give him the right tools, and he, like, what I actually like about him is, one, he in the game, he clearly like, knows he's fucking good, but he also seems on social media itself like he has quite a sort of even-tempered mentality. He doesn't seem like he's getting too caught up in all the hype or the drama or people flaming him, etc. Actually, again, I'm just a fan of the guy's play. I think he's just a really good player, yeah.
I was just
I agree with you. This is a perfect example of where, if you're humanoid, mate, if you've been phoning them in the last few years, you better get a new phone plan. Sadly, we don't have a phone sponsor. I'd go to that right now. But if you're humanoid, the whole shit before was Caps is the king, and then Cos Larson and Rogue weren't that good. It's like there's no one else. Like, it's just, is Vethio all right? Like, you looked around the league, mid lane had gotten in the region that, remember, produced all the great mid laners of the West. We had very few mid laners, and obviously Perks was kind of like considered a meme, and everyone was just falling apart. Nuke was good, but he wasn't some superstar. I agree with you. The tracking for Jackie's isn't just, is he good? It's, is he going to surpass humanoid? That's on the table. That's not a crazy tick. In fact, I'll even say this. If you look at their teammates, humanoid still has the better teammates. So let's see how this split goes, because I could see a world where if humanoid doesn't step up and give me some of those world performances, it's gonna get fucking spicy, mate. It's gonna get interesting.
No,
and also,
sure.
shout out to whoever did say this Reddit comment. I didn't see the name. I just remember it from my mind. Someone just said, I'm a software engineer, and I wish I had the job security that humanoid does. Whoever did that, masterful. Well done, sir. Well done.
No, it's the conversation, bro. Like EU mids, bro. It's like we lost Perks, you mentioned. We lost Nemesis. We had Humanoid 2021. Right? It's like there was just a big gap, and finally, bro, Jackie's, Vladi. That's exciting. I am happy that BDS stuck through with Nuke so long, because they could have done the hallmark thing of just like throwing away, because he was not good in the beginning. I heard conversations about how good he was in scrims and how he was good in tryouts
the whole time, yeah.
But just in like in the matches, Nuke just wasn't there, and he was given a lot of time, and then eventually now, like the last year, the last 2 years with BDS, he's been very, very good. That was an investment that paid off, and luckily, BDS stuck with him, because that could have gone wrong in many ways, right? Sure.
Right. Speaking of humanoid, let's do Fnatic then. So first of all, they did do a classic Fnatic, which is actually just immediately let you down right out of the gate. Like, I don't even know what the fuck that first game was. Again, listen, Grabs, shout out to you, mate. That was a hilarious tribute to your old drafts. I don't know what the draft was. I have no idea what the fuck anything was. This game, I have no clue what was going on. I don't know if they thought they were dreaming and the alarm clock was going to go off in a minute. Like, oh, phew, I have to get to the LEC today. Thank God that was a nightmare. Oh, what? That was a real game? So that set my expectations low. But the problem is, everyone knows I want to believe so badly that Upset's got the right team again. And then you add in Mickey X, who he's always been my boy, mate. I've always thought he was slightly underrated and people hated on him too much because it became fashionable to say he hinted all the time in G2. He didn't do it as much as people say. And they didn't mention, as I said, he would have game-saving players too. By the way, the amount of times I've seen him do a poppy ult perfectly on the carry, get him out the fight, and then they win a dragon fight, it's insane. Like, this guy's almost like OP just on the one champion. So I want that bot lane so badly to be what we were discussing, the 2021, 2022 Hylissang Upset. I want a rerun of that, bro. I want to see the fucking god tier shit. So I want so badly to believe in this team. But they haven't necessarily started so sick out the gate. Where are you at on this Fnatic squad? Obviously, we were all hyping them as potentially a contender, etc. So what about the opening week? What are we thinking?
They had, besides like the first game, in my mind, they had relatively soft opponents. You know, they played against Team Heretics and Vitality, and these are two teams that folded quite fast. Like, I think it's good that you stomp out these teams, and that's good enough.
Vitality folds faster than Superman on Laundry Day. Just an old school one. That'll always work, mate. That'll always be in the back pocket. Don't worry.
Fucking, where was I? Jesus. Superman folding laundry. There was the Koi game. The Koi game. The Koi game. Like, strategically, it was so ass on many levels. Like, just to really, really dig into the preparation here is one thing that stood out is Upset didn't want to play Varus. He picked Misfortune, which was very, very strange where everybody wants to play Varus. They opened Scanner, picked Ivan, which is, okay, that's your strategy, at least gain something for it. You take MF and you gave the Varus away. And then they pick Victor, solid. I like Humanoid on his mages. Good and all. But then with this composition, you better be the motherfucking team that just locks in Kesante. Lock in the Kesante on 4 because you have the Ivan. You need the front line for of course, the Victor. And you take it away from Midwin. And somehow they didn't lock it in. They picked the Alistar into the Rel. And then they ended up on Jax. So it's like a lot of things were so confusing there. But the most of the disappointing part about that game was I want to watch Upset Mickey pop off, you know, and take control over the game. And then we put them on the passenger champions in a sense. Like, you can do cool shit on Alistar, but come on, it's like MF Alistar against Varus Rel. You don't even have like initiative in the matchup or like real opportunities to challenge the enemy in the lane. So it was just like a very, very disappointing opening game. And then we saw this scenario where like Humanoid lost his flash on mid, almost died, got away by slivers of health. And then there was like this grub setup where Humanoid, like in a very, very strange way, tried to cross very late over vision, died. And then they tried to, in this very awkward way, contest that grub fight with like basically 3v4 with Alistar being level 5 against Rel's level 6. It was just like absurd. It was very, very rough to see, I think, prep-wise and also gameplay-wise, because I don't want to just sit there and blame the scanner and blame the draft. It's just gameplay-wise, it was also like tragic. At least they got their shit together. We got to see Upset play Varus in that game 3 that they played against, I believe, Team Heretics. So that was cool to know. But I need to see them against the other, like the other teams in the top 5, because that is where the test will lie. But I don't want to do the thing where I just sweep them completely under the rug off of that game 1. But the format is very, very brutal. The pressure is very, very, very high for all of these guys. And I do think that setting the right tone for how you move forward is super important. And I do think that they were lucky that they played weaker opponents in that week 1. If there was a scenario where they played G2 and let's say KC on the same week, all of a sudden starting 0-3, things would look very, very different.
By the way, if anyone's watching live and it's like slightly lagging on Twitch, it isn't lagging in our call, so the VOD will be perfect. Obviously, we're just going to keep going. No, I know what you mean. And if you look at this next week, they start with the Rogue game, which is easy, but then they've got G2 BDS. So we will know after this next week, actually, if there's problems here, if they're going to be a top team. This should be the week that they go and do it. Because I do think on paper, they do have the right pieces. Like, one of my concerns always was the Oscarin one. But again, here's the key reason why I think it can work, Yamato. I don't see Oscarin as some big ego, like, hey, give me my thing to play. He's going to be a follower. He's going to do what they tell him. So as long as the rest of the team gets their shit together and they know the protocol stuff, and again, it grabs whoever the fuck it was, mate. It probably wasn't you, but your job is to take all the criticism. That just wasn't it, that draft. So I'm not even someone who normally comments on draft, but I am with you. Like, hey, we got Upset and Mickey X. oh boy, better lock in misfortune and shut the fuck up. That's not what we want to see. That's not what I paid to see. I paid to see upset on a really good playmaking champion and then not go in and let the teammate die and then just say it wasn't my fault. I have KD in the CS. That's a joke. Whatever. That's a harmless joke there. Because there's the other problem people don't know Yamato. You know, back in the day, veteran, dead now, RIP. Not really, just not relevant in League of Legends for whatever reason. I think he just did some stupid things outside of the server as far as I know. Right, back in the day, one of the ways he actually sold everyone on upset when he was coming up through that team in Schalke in the challenger scene is he said this guy could be the next Forgiven. And I get what he means, like carry potential, like big ego to want to be the carry and want to be the best. By the way, to even have the balls, like I was saying about the Wrinkle and fucking some of these other players, to have the balls to come into the league where Reckless has won 1 billion titles and is always top 2 and go, I think I'm better than him and he's overrated. I love players like that. But the one downside is he also inherited another factor that Forgiven has, which is if you ever incorrectly analyze why he was bad in a game, in which he might have been bad and he might have lost, you've probably had this, you will wake up to that like fucking a novel in your DMs. It'll just be like, you don't know this is going on like this and behind the scenes. And I was trying to, and they're a bit like Hylissang, like you said earlier. They're so fucking good at explaining like logically why it wasn't their fault. And unfortunately at the end of it, you just go like, well, shit, I'm not even an expert about League myself, but I guess I have to take it. Like, you beat me on that one. I always wonder, like, how do their teammates handle it? Like, do they just fucking chess move them all with the fucking arguments? Because that Upset is a very good player, but he clearly does have an aspect to him, a bit like Forgiven, where he wants the game played a very particular way, though. He's not just the guy like, hey, I'm just happy-go-lucky, you know, just put me on whatever and we'll play. And you can be the carry or I could be the carry. No, his shit really is like, I'm the best. I practiced on this. Put me on this in this way. Now we group. Now we fight. And if you can do it and it works, you've proven it. He can be a very good player. He can be one of the best. He can win your games. But I wouldn't say he's difficult because, by the way, compared to the Recklesses of Beginners, he's nowhere close. Like, the horror stories are nothing like that. Even the people who've coached them all say he's just a really good player. He has like mild problems, but he's not the easiest player to coach, put it that way, right?
Yeah. I can say, like, I always say this is just Upset in terms of like what he puts out in scrims and in practice. He performs in scrims at the level of some of the best players in the world consistently. It's like he can 1v9 scrims over and over again, and the level he puts on average, like in his work. Even if you watch him in Champions Queue.
People think he's arrogant, bro. He does what I think arrogant people need to. He holds himself to a very high standard. He really does put in the fucking hours, and he doesn't just phone it in, right?
It's like nobody shits on people in practice the way Upset does. It's like I've had like decent solid scrims internationally. Only when like Upset was a part of that, you know, because you can like compete with those bot lanes and the level you bring to practice is super important. Like the main thing that was challenging, because I do think it's very different now, because I think he's matured, and I think that he has like moved, because it's like the conversations we had before we started working together in KC. It's like I wanted to make sure that like a lot of those things were covered, because I wanted to like go into that situation knowing that I have him on my side. You know, we're working together again, and I want us to work together like effectively again, because 2021 it was like very tight knit, and then 2022 like the roster was very chaotic, and I felt like I kind of lost that bond with him. I do think that he's the type of player that believes, like at the time he believed that he can work his way out of any problem, and when the conditions of how he would play would not be how he imagined, then I do think his stress levels would become like very high, and he would like take too big of a responsibility on himself and like overwork himself and kind of be in a vicious cycle of like really just like letting the stress add up more and more. And it came from like a good place, because his effort in terms of like getting better is something that I just don't see in other people. It's like the amount of solo queue he plays, how he plays in scrims, like he puts in the effort. But sometimes the right thing is to slow down and let things like play out and do your part and kind of, you know, you can extend an olive branch, but you can't like shove it into someone's mouth, you know, like you need to, some things take time. And I do think that now, especially like in the time that I worked with him in KC, it's like he became a lot more at peace, focused on himself, knew the things that he could impact, and focused a lot more on like his own individual level, and chose his times a lot more in terms of how he like connects with teammates. But I do think that this is just like the standard evolution of like a player that is really, really good going to like that role in the team where they know how to begin to like impact teammates in the right way. It's like often you have like high, like very, very good players, and then you hear it's like, oh, and maybe I wasn't liked because I was very direct and very strict and so forth. But then when you master like the art of how to like push people forward, this is like truly when you get like really, really unleashed. And like it's like a reminiscent of like what Crownie went through. It's like,
yes,
he was a player that like could push people and like elevate the team, but he had to master the art of like how he communicated to his teammates, and that's something that he mentioned that's something that he like has been actively like working on. So like Upset now, I think this is like prime. It's like he's very, very good. I think he's mature. He's in his prime. I do think this is like the moment in time. Like Upset needs to have many, many off years before I am not off like the Upset train. But I think this like Upset and Mick, I just want to see that magic, really, really, reach the peaks that we believe it can reach.
Yeah, I actually think one of his problems, to tie into what you're saying, is he is very German in that sense. He just blurts out loud what he really thinks, but he means it in like a positive way. He's trying to fix the team environment or an issue in the game, etc. If I could go back in time, because I've known this guy, but I didn't always know what to say to people like that because I'm not a player. Like you have to learn like how the team environment is. The advice I would have given him if I could go back in a time machine 6-7 years would be, early on, when he hadn't got that skill set, where he hadn't polished off some of the rough edges and he hadn't sort of learned how to communicate with people, I would have told him back in the day, mate, don't tell them directly, use your coach. Tell the coach privately what you think the issue is and have the coach be the guy who relays info to people or does the classic coaching move where you make them think it's their idea because you suggest something and it works and then they think, oh, they take ownership of it, etc. The problem with that is, I do think sometimes in teams, he's let people, the same thing with Forgiven, he's let people make him the bad guy, where when he is the guy who's really motivated to, we should play at a higher level, that wasn't acceptable to what we did there, and people aren't doing the things I need to carry. The problem with that is you can come off, not only can you come off arrogant, but sometimes if a teammate's playing badly, it's easy for them to just go, he was a tyrant, or he was complaining, and make you sound like this monster. Whereas, as I said, even though people have tried to make it sound like that from like Schalke or whatever, the coaches I know that worked with him and then worked with people like Forgiven say it's night and day. Like Forgiven really was a nightmare. This guy just had some little rough edges, like we're saying here, little areas where it didn't always align necessarily.
No, definitely. I think I can give the example of summer. It's like summer 2021 when we had Adam and Iski. Like that functioned so well because in the end we knew where like we knew at some point that Adam is going to be like our wild card. Like he's going to be like our wild card, and the effort trying to shape him into something that we believed he should be at the time didn't make a lot of sense. So we kind of let him be, and I convinced the boys to like concentrate their efforts and their energy on very, very like specific things. And in the end, we became a team that like mastered how to play through bottom side, and the frustrations of trying to deal with things that we couldn't necessarily change. Like we didn't waste energy on that. It's like you just have to concentrate energy into areas where you can find progress and move forward. But in the end, it's like we became masters of a specific playstyle because we accepted the circumstance for what it was. And sometimes that's just like the right thing to do. It's like you can try to push your team in the direction and your vision, but sometimes players are going to be what they are. And sometimes you need to just let them be what they are and concentrate your efforts where it makes sense.
All right, let's do it. The last team we'll talk about is Movistar. So understandably, this is a team I actually thought was an obvious team that should be really good. It's another lineup where it's kind of like Hanwha Life. You've made one player change that's probably even an upgrade, and the rest of the team should maintain their level from before, and you can hope synergies pass over. Look, the first game against Fnatic, Dynamite stuff, yeah, looked great. Jojo was smurfed in the first couple of games. Yes, he had the game on Ari. We all saw it. We all saw the things that happened. But you know what? That's one of those ones, where I can take that. First of all, he's in a brand new region. And then secondly, that is going to come with the style of player he wants to be. He's not trying to just be a passenger mid laner. This guy's trying to be the MVP of the league. It's like when he was in the NA team. So even though that was a bad game, I can take it because I thought some of the other games were very good and I thought he immediately did fit. And you know what? All those things I hoped for, like it's an Alyoya team, he leads the way, the others all put super players well. I think a lot of the sort of boxes have been checked for me on week one for Movistar Yamato. Like I had them for me, my third team. I thought it would be G2, Fnatic, and then this team. I think they should be a contender. I think they look pretty good.
No. I'm with you. I think Super has like steadily like progressed. I think he was like one of the better performers at Worlds 2. I do think like the mid lane was like the glaring problem on that roster 100%. In Frescawi and Giorgio Pune is like whatever issues he had on C9, my take is always like if you get fired for those problems are not happening again. Like in the next team, whoever inherits that player is not going to inherit that problems, because it's like that is like a big ass wake up call for most people. Like if whatever issues happen on C9 continue, then it's like just career over. It's just like it's just completely like GG. You out of the mix. I think that Giorgio Pune is a fantastic talent. I think that his last year in C9 was like uninteresting, but just looking at his body of work when he came into the league on EG and won the split and so forth, this is a player that was a big part of the change in terms of how mid lane was being played in North America. In my mind, there was like this idea that you basically simplify the game and you basically scale. And you could get away with playing Zillions and mages, basically like the Jensen Bjergsen era of North American League of Legends that always suffered like internationally in some sense, especially in Bjergsen's case. But Giorgio Pune kind of revitalized that and was playing very, very well together with Inspired. And that makes sense to me in the context of playing together with someone like Elioya. Like Elioya, Alvaro, these are very, very active players. Giorgio Pune wants to also be super, super active. And in the end, that game where they played against KC, I do think that they were just simply like outdrafted. Like they strategically, they couldn't play. So I understood like the approach they took in that game, trying to engage over and over again, because looking at that team, it's like they have Kalista, Renata, Zinzao, Kisanta, everything relatively short range when they play against Maokai, Koki, and all of these champions that are just poking them down. I think that Yike did like brilliant ganks on midway, found like flashes over walls to just break the matchup mid completely. That puts him on the back foot. But I understood the approach. He was like trying to win the game where Mad Lions understood that, our draft is kind of suffering against the enemy composition and we need to find opportunities to kind of go. So I'm happy with where Koi landed. I think super, super good. I think that they made the right roster change in the right position. And I think it's important to realize, at least from my side, is that even though they made it to Worlds last year, I don't think last year's was super, super like, like it wasn't a super, super impressive year. It was just like a perfect storm of many things, like the BDS benching and making it to the finals and being competitive against G2 when LEC was relatively weak. But then was like just this downtrend where they managed to qualify in the end through just chance almost. Like there was this meme with their 40%, 43% win ratio to qualify. I do think that this roster has a great opportunity to do a lot more than the previous year and build like a solid foundation for consistency, because I think the Elioya Alvaro like engine of this team is something that I really buy into and believe in.
Also, I feel like people, especially because of how it ended on Cloud9, act like he was the problem in that team. Bro, even in summer, he was still good. Like, if he was playing not Team Liquid and FlyQuest, he shit on the other mids. Like, one thing you can never take away from this guy, and this is why I say they should hype him if you're from NA, like the double lift of mid lane. The guy clearly has fucking hands. And he also has that cockiness that I also love, again, where he also, a part of it's, look, as you saw in my interview with him, part of it he is aware of and he's doing it for marketing, but he also believes it too. He really does have that like naivety which you want a player with hands to have, to believe he could beat the Koreans, mate. He's not the guy who's already beaten down like probably Nuke is after like going to Korea and get your head kicked in the scrims in all the fucking year. This guy still thinks, remember, he's only in his 4th year now. He hasn't played for like 7 years. He's still a young player too. Like, I still think the sky's the limit for this guy. And I think it looks great on this team. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I agree with you. I actually thought this is where drama actually gets in the way of great conversations, because of the drama of the backlash against how Winter went, where we were all saying, look, that was a bit of an overrated split. They weren't that good, you know. Then it made people think that we're always just going to say their whole team's trash. Actually, for me, from the summer split onwards, that team started to earn my respect. And by the season finals, I think it was totally fine. Even though I prefer to watch BDS's style of play, I think if you can beat G2 in a best of 5, it's totally legitimate to go to Worlds if that is the format. So I didn't have a problem with that. Yeah, they weren't great at Worlds, but whatever. I actually did think some of those pieces, basically nearly all the pieces except mid lane, were at least redeemable. And I actually do think Super is underrated. He just said too many silly things, so he's never going to be good enough for people with that hype. And then I do think actually, Elioya, I don't know why actually people hated on him last year. He was never bad. He just had times where maybe he wasn't connected. If you play his game, he clearly can still be a top jungler. Like, I'm kind of a fan of this team. I actually think I could enjoy the way they play, and I could see them being a team that gets their style. By the way, they're still definitely daring and willing to take some fucking ballsy moves in the game and do some crazy plays. So it's going to be an exciting squad for me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, same. Just to add the final point, like I think Elioya as a player, it seems like the way he started, he was like this like mechanical demon almost. But I feel like he's now shaped himself into like more of a Jankos type of a player, where
Right.
I do think that when he's playing the champions that have the time and space to be like very active, this is where I see him like thrive. I think in the meta where he had to play like the AP carries, there was like the one-off like Rengar game that he played that was like really strange. I think that's where he kind of lost me a bit, like on the mechanical stuff, which is strange to think about because this is what Elioya was in the past. But now I feel like when he's playing the Sejuani, the Xin Zhao, this is what I kind of like. Like as long as Alvaro and Elioya are playing champions where they're strong together, to contest together, I think this is a team that is very dangerous, and they're very good at snowballing fast, which is something that is very important in this meta. And even in that loss, right, against KC, there was that moment at Atakan. If they played maybe a little bit different, maybe that game shifts completely. And I just wanted to highlight that because best of ones in the end are just so crazy. It's like they can change our perception of one small thing. Maybe KC don't land that smite, and then G2 wins that game, and then the narrative changes, and the mentality and the pressure changes too. And I can say this from experience because it's like we went 2-7 when I was on KC, and it's like the pressure of the first week. We had very tough matchups in the first one. I believe we had G2 Fnatic and Koi, and then it's like we start 0-3, and then it's like just weighs heavy on you. So it's like in terms of how you approach that week of practice, which is legit just 2 days, 3 days. That's a very limited amount of time to make a lot of big changes because you kind of need to work very hard to stay in one piece because it really you just it hits you hard to lose those matches.
Right, I'm going to make an executive decision, guys. Much like Jojo, I'm going to say, fuck the LTA. We're not going to do it. They haven't played yet. We already talked to some of the rosters last episode. So what we'll do is when they've played in a few days, next week, we'll definitely cover the LTA and we'll get all the Americans. We'll do all that shit. Because it's been a long episode already, what we're going to do is, should we do some viewer questions after the break? You want to do them? You want to do your first solo time? So what we'll do is we'll do a little break now of a few minutes and we'll play a song. We'll come back. I've got the Q&A. Obviously, I'll explain how you do that, etc. And we'll do some of the viewer questions. Not too many. We'll do a few of those for like 20 minutes, half an hour. How about that? We'll do a break now, everyone.
Sounds good.
Right, we're now going to do a quick viewer questions segment. By the way, if you want to know where you could submit the questions, not in the comment section of the YouTube video, not on Twitch right now. Actually, what you do is, if you are a subscriber to our Last Free Nation Discord, it's a great way to support us. We get most of the money. Then you can submit a question in the special channel there for exactly those questions. And then I will now play the role of Monty, where I will pick which questions to do. And spoiler, there is one question here which I won't address, but the person themselves will know. Their alias is Lamppost Lenny. I'm not going to ask your question, mate, because that's not what the new version of the show is like, where we can address every topic in the world outside of the game. That's more a question. I would suggest just resubmit that to the Four Horsemen. That's a perfect question for like a Richard Lewis Monty show. Then they can go deep as fuck on that one. So what we'll do is we'll start. Bot Pounder 420, the icon, has asked, is Mike Evans the most underrated wide receiver of all time? So the first question is, do you watch the NFL?
Not at all, man.
Right, I'll take this one then. Basically, he actually might be. Like, I do think he is certainly up there because basically this guy, it's not just the numbers, he has insane consistency. What proves it to me is he can do the A/B testing. This guy had the Jameis Winston guy who literally couldn't see and needed LASIK and was still elite. Then he had Tom Brady at the end of his career, who was like a chess master and was great with him. Then he's good with he's just good with literally everyone. This guy is an actual stud. I do think he is mega underrated in the sense that he's never gotten the hype of the Justin Jeffersons and these sorts of players that are the big names. I think he is an absolute fucking stud. For me, look, here's the problem with the NFL if people don't know. They're really stingy with wide receiver for the Hall of Fame. That's why even Randy Moss and Terrell Owens took a while to get in. So I can't say he's a guaranteed Hall of Fame because I don't know how many they'll ever let in. But I do think of this era, he is the most underrated one. I'll give you that one. Right. What about this? Since this is going to help you, Yamato, because this also plays to you. It says, Bobble Shinobi says, as all of you lived in Korea for some time, so obviously Yamato was there coaching Sandbox, What would you say are your favorite Korean fried chicken combos? It could be a dish involving it or something you just love having with it. What's the vibe for a Korean meal? Or is there something you like on the side? Obviously, people don't know. Oftentimes in Korea, people either have beer with it. You go to the the chicken hoff or whatever the fuck you call it, or you have it with, famously the fried chicken comes with that like coleslaw shit that they all love with that mayo.
Yeah.
So what's your style? What type of fried chicken are you into? What do you like with it?
No, my end is like in terms of just fried chicken in general. My go-to, which isn't even fried chicken, is this place called Gubne. It's like this chain, right? It's like they have like the oven chicken, but it's the flavored chicken in the oven
because like a
it
skewer
just
or something, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't like knock me out completely. Because always when it's so easy to eat Korean fried chicken. It's like I always go for the garlic or I go for the cheese flavors. And then I just slam them until I get the food coma, and then I just top it off like with the horseradish that comes with. I think it's horseradish, right? The little cubes.
I think so. Yes.
Those cubes, like as a freshener, is my go-to. And then like a nice Korean beer, I just go for the garlic flavors and the cheese flavors. And if I can get gubne, that's my way because it just doesn't kill the whole day. How about you, Thorin?
I will say first of all. Actually, this ties into LCK. Remember that team, BBQ Oliver's? If people don't know, that doesn't stand for barbecue. BBQ Oliver's is like a Korean restaurant. I always loved that chicken. That's one of my favorites. Because if you don't know what makes the Korean fried chicken unique is, it's not just like breaded like KFC style. It's almost like they like cook the skin in like a crispy way. And somehow it does that thing where it's well cooked, but it still has the moisture inside. That's why I love it. It's not dry on like the breast. So I always thought that chicken was fucking banging. And then my problem was this though. I got two angles here, which is one, when I first went to Korea to live there, like in the time when I was with Monty, like 10 years ago, because I used to only eat Korean barbecue and it was mainly just the meat, I was almost eating like a keto diet. So I remember I went back home, I was having Korean barbecue every day and I weighed myself. I hadn't gained or lost anything. I was like, holy shit, I've cracked it. But then the problem was the next time I went back, I discovered these amazing these chicken chains. And famously, you could even ask her about this. She'll tell you. If Susie used that app that they all use, Cacao, Monty's wife, Susie, when she was just little Susie working for OGN. And the joke is, every day she would just wait for the message from me, like, can you please order me chicken? Because he couldn't order it in English, right? You had to know, like, how to fucking call them up and do all this shit and tell them your address. And so I essentially would just make her, Monty's wife, this is how hard Monty's relationship is. Like, she has to just order me chicken, like, every day. Otherwise, I don't eat or whatever. Like, that's not really true, but it was partly true. And the other problem I had was, when I would get the chicken, they would famously in Korea send along like a little sauce packet. But here's the problem, Yamato. They would send for a bucket of chicken, like a sauce packet like that of honey mustard sauce. Now listen, that honey mustard sauce is crack fucking, holy shit, dude. So my problem, this is what ruined me. You see that story about how I didn't gain or lose a pound? Then I discovered though, Yamato, that's not some special chain sauce. You can just buy like a fucking, like a ketchup bottle. You can buy like a bottle of that honey mustard sauce. That did me, bro, because I was buying that like an actual meme and just pouring it on the.
Oh shit!
Then when I went home, I'd gained like 20 pounds or something. Like, that was out of control. So there you go. I think I've said enough about my.
Bro, I can also add, bro. Chicken. I can also add. It's like the year I was in Sandbox, bro. Like we had this Ajuma, basically like the team grandma that would cook meals for us, and they would be crazy, and I would be like very grateful. You know, I was always very grateful. I would do the thing where would hug her after the meal. I would say thank you, and nobody else did. So she kind of loved me for it. You know, we had like and she would always let me choose what we would eat, and I would always say like I want to eat beef ribs, galbijim. I just want ribs before every game day.
Yeah.
It was just so insanely good, and I would just overeat. And the thing is, I don't know what it is, but like Korean players,
I know what you mean.
Their metabolism is mental, bro. It's mental. Because every evening we would eat two meals that would be
huge meals, don't they? Yeah.
2 meals that were cooked that we could just eat endless. And then the third time and the evening we would just order. It would either be like seafood or fried chicken, most of the time gubne.
Yes.
And we just order fried chicken, and then Gorilla would be like, who wants a snack from the 24-hour shop? And I fell in love with Faker ice cream. And it was just a disaster. At one point, I was eating 2 ice creams because like Gorilla just knew my order. He was like my just crack dealer, just coming up with the ice cream. And at the end of the year, bro, when I came home, we like celebrated Christmas, and there's like all the birthdays and all the meals. At the end of the year, I weighed 120 kilos, and I had no clue because we didn't have a scale. How I realized, brother, because my thighs were touching while I was walking.
Okay.
I was wearing these polyester pants, and there was a swoosh like the fucking Seinfeld episode, and I was like, shit, man, I am fat. I need to get my shit together. I just went on 1 meal a day for 2 months. The stress of fanatic, lost 20 kilos in 2 months, back to regular, you know?
Yes. That's also, by the way, bizarrely, a feature of Korean food. Both the chicken and Korean barbecue is one of the only types of food I've ever had, bro, that you can almost like eat an unlimited amount. I don't get full. I actually am someone who does reasonable portion size. With that ones, I can just go ham. So yeah. Okay, next one. Big Boy says, is there one particular day from school that you remember vividly? What happened on that day? Now, I'll cheat since Yamato hasn't got forever. I actually did a past episode where I told a mad story about a time I did diving class or something. And I basically told the person I could dive. And then I already did all my test dives. And I went up to the top board where I'd never done it before and tried to do a movie dive. And I've cleared up and I just landed on my back and I wrecked myself in front of the whole class. And it was really embarrassing. Anyway, that's a past episode. You have to go back to a past few questions. I want to know what yours is though. Is there a day from school you remember?
Oh shit! Now that you say it, like most of the days that I remember, because for some reason in Sweden they gave all the kids laptops, and that was a disaster because we would have basically we would just go into the Wi-Fi, right, and we would have just CS servers, 1.6 servers just running, and we the school was maybe 500 kids in total, but it's just 100 players online perma because we would just tell the teacher, I want to work outside, I can't concentrate in here. They were like, okay, and I remember this one specific day we were we had this hall where just a bunch of tables, the main hall, the main building, and I remember it was just a dream hack. It was just maybe 80 kids just sitting on laptops playing Counter-Strike, everyone on the same server. I remember the principal just going mental, absolutely mental. He was like, "What the fuck are you guys doing?" He was swore for the first time, and then I remember that day specifically so vividly because I was just the goal was just how to trick the teacher to be able to leave to play games, because that's how I became good at League of Legends in the end. I got to play at school.
Actually, that's something I never actually thought of because, unfortunately, because of your voice, I never actually associate you with Sweden, bro. So I have to say, I did forget that you grew up in the era where every Swedish kid played CS. That was just a thing back then. That was like League is to Koreans now, yeah. All right, next question is Hellfire 206. This is a bit of a mad one, so just tell me if you have an answer for this. He says, trying to use a Thorin-style hyperbolic suggestion to let the world burn for bad systems or ideas, as in the idea that if you hate it, you just accelerate the idea even further and make it look shit. He goes, I think they should introduce soft, fearless drafting for BO1 round robins, as in the whole round robin, you can only play a champion once. He says, how terrible would that make the viewing experience? Thoughts?
Bro, I had the same idea.
Oh, okay.
I had the same idea. I could see the flaw in let's say your scheduling can screw you over because let's say you play a tough team at the end and you have less champions and you get screwed over. And then it's I would love it because there would be a risk element to how you could metagame it, right? It's we play a weaker team. Maybe we should play less useful champs and just try to win anyway. And then it's how do you gauge the risk? I honestly would prefer that to the BO1 system we have now. But at the same time, from a competitive side, if I was within the teams and I have to experience that shit, it's we just played these 15 champs this week and we lost. Oh, fuck. Now this is my players' main champs, and now we're going to the practice week. In the current format, it would really just, I think, we would just have to send some players to maybe a mental institute after, because that would just break your brain and break your mind in ways that would just be twisted. I think it would be too cruel to implement this format, just way too cruel.
Right. Tallahassee Riot Supervisor, quite a funny name, says, was there any chance this past off-season of Inspired going to G2? Now, I'll just quickly say, as far as I know, he was under contract, so he'd have to be bought out anyway. And secondly, I don't have any behind-the-scenes info. I don't know what G2 was thinking. But as far as I know, Inspired is now on that train. Bad news if you're an EU fan. Well, he's just going to stay in NA and probably get the green card. That's just kind of what he's probably... As long as he's in a top team, I get the vibe. He's just going to stay like Jensen and some of the Sven and the others, I don't know if he's... Was there even anything behind the scenes where you think he could have come back to Europe, Yamato?
No, I didn't hear any conversation that like that at all. I think the green card is pretty much getting settled right for him. That's my understanding, and he seems happy in North America. Like from like a gameplay standpoint, bro, if they sign Inspired, that would be like completely mental because it's like in the end, it's like Inspired. He's like one of the best Western players. He showed it at the World Championship. He has shown it time and time again on different rosters, being insanely competitive. And just watching how he communicates in game, like he talks about the right things all the time. So he just raises your floor super high, but at the same time contributes that ceiling because mechanically he's just like insanely talented. So this is like a player that I think is a no-brainer for almost every every Western team. Like I think maybe like of course Fnatic have Razork, maybe that's a conversation, right? But like Inspired is insane. So if they could have gotten him, convinced him, God bless. But I don't think it's gonna happen.
Here's a fun one, because Introducing says, I asked this question last year and I really enjoyed your response. If you were to build a team of players not in the LEC currently, and he says that you can have EU Masters players, etc., what would be the best roster you can make, and could they make it to Worlds? So what we're thinking of here is who wasn't it? Now, it's actually perfect, Yamato, because there's even all those fuckers in the NLC like your boys. So actually, we should be able to make a pretty good team out of this.
Oh, yeah.
Give me some names. Who would you suggest? People not in LEC currently.
All right, so I think like we have Wunder, right? Wunder is a guy. Like Wunder is not playing. I think he's still super good on the right team.
Top pick, right?
Like jungle wise,
Forton as well if you want. There's Forton out there, fucked off in Brazil or whatever, right?
Yeah, I'm just worried. We're very worried about recreating like the old Team Heretics roster that went to shit.
Okay.
Because that's It has to be, right?
You know what I mean? It is Jankos for fuck's sake. That was. Here's the thing. You know what? This is what will blow people's mind. I'm going to say it for mid lane. Surely it's Nemesis.
Has to be.
If I'm picking people not in the LEC, like he's obviously better than all the other fucking people. Like I'd take him immediately.
I'm sorry, leader. Like you're my boy. You're in the lucky sack, but it is like a Nemesis is better right now. It's just a proven quantity in my mind.
Who are we thinking for bot lane?
Bot lane. It's like I don't know. Maybe we just have to like grab the Los Ratones bot lane, right? It's like Trimby as an angle, right?
Trimby and Crowley would be pretty fun, right? That could be an interesting.
Trimby Crowley could be interesting. I'm just as I mentioned, I'm just worried about recreating the Team Heretics roster. That roster is so cursed, right?
True.
I wonder like if we could convince Perks to just role swap too, because I think I think him playing top lane or support.
We got him right. Okay.
I think like top lane Perks, like even now, just like seeing his game ideas, I think if he put himself into it, he could be like a brilliant top laner. But just like mid laners in general, just better at the game. And I think Perks as a top laner could be super interesting. It's like just to include Perks, Nemesis in the same roster somehow, I think it would be like insanely interesting. And as like support, then I can consider Trimby, because then we don't have like the same like kind of makeup of the previous Team Heretics one.
Also, I will say, I actually think it does sort of say something about what LEC's GMing is like. Man, that roster sounds pretty good. Maybe that roster could make Worlds as like the third or fourth team. Like, why not, right? It's not outrageous. There's some pretty fucking good players we're putting together here. These weren't bombs or nobodies, yeah. Right, okay. Next question is Nadnerb, which is just as far as I can tell the name Brendan backwards if you look at it. So he's put Nadnerb says, who wins, and this is ridiculous, who wins an all-time short player roster or an all-time tall player roster? The problem with this is I haven't met that many of the players in real life, so I'm not even sure who's that short or who's that tall. So I don't know. Like, for example, on the tall roster, we've got the Shy. I mean, he's there, right? So we got him. I'm not actually sure who's that tall, though. Who would be Sven maybe could be on that one. Who else is even that tall, though?
Well, the issue is, I think that the average height is on the lower end, so you just have access to like a bigger pool of players, right? So it's like the short roster needs to just be better.
This is going to be good. We can have like Prime Jensen on there, the fucking Zen. We do all that shit. Yeah, of course, it's brilliant.
But we can we can do it like internationally, right? I don't know if we're supposed to say the roster, but. It's like I'm just thinking. I just see like all the mid laners, like all the mid lane goats. They are relatively like short.
Oh, I've just realised, bro, Carrier gets to be on this team.
Yeah.
I think the short team surely wins, don't they? Come on,
the short team must win. It's like we have like Showmaker could role swap. Like I don't know where like the players that are like in between where they land.
Right.
Like is Faker short? Is Rookie short? Like they're like in the middle, right? I don't know. I don't know if I'm being like just like a tall guy talking.
I think the short team wins this one. Surely they do. Especially because I'll also just throw this out there. If you want a general rule, guys, for who would make a great esports pro, it is someone who's like a little nerd who was like bullied and he's like, I'll get back at you in the game and be better than all of you. And that's, you just go into the virtual reality world to be the king, don't you? So, right, there's only a few left. Richie, aka R Farley Dude 97, says, Yamato, what has the experience been like coaching the Roddy Sack team?
Oh,
And he
shit.
wants to know how you felt about the experience so far.
Honestly, it's like the weirdest part of it is that we are streaming at the same time. Like dealing with that is very, very weird. It's like the chat is very active and the stream needs to be entertaining, because usually it's like if I'm watching pro games and I'm like coaching, I'm strictly focused on that and I can rewind the same thing over and over again. Now I have like worries about interacting with the chat and also at the same time like letting the game play, so like the comms make sense to what the player, like the stream is seeing. So it's like navigating these elements is very unique, and at the same time it's like when I coached in the past, I was like only focused on that, only focused on that, only focused on that. But now it's like, oh, I stream 6 hours before we begin a best of 5 scrim set. So it's like the fatigue is already like set in, and there's no like a good amount of time to put to like the preparation in terms of what I want out of the practice. And then it's like the additional layer of just doing it remotely and doing it with like a lot of characters that also are streaming. It's like navigating how, if they're being serious or if this is an issue, or should I let it run in terms of what like the entertainment purpose of what they're doing. Navigating that is also very, very weird, because like some toxic behaviors I would like hammer down on right away. Sometimes I let them ride because they're funny, you know? And sometimes I don't know, like with these players, if they are being serious or if they're playing it up. So it's like navigating that is very strange, and I'm getting to know the guys, but so far I would say it's like it's very, very stressful, and I find it hard to be like impactful in the way that I would want to. Yeah.
Then he has a question for me. Sadly, it's another NFL one. He says, regarding the NFL, any thoughts/predictions on playoffs so far and general thoughts about the season? I'll make this brief. The problem is, for me, the playoffs are sort of ruined, because I actually wanted the Super Bowl to be the Ravens against the Lions, who I thought were the two best teams overall. So they're both out already. So my issue is I'm not a huge Bills fan, personally. I don't think the Commanders is good. Like, I think the Commanders are going to get caught out. So I don't know. The problem is right now, I actually think the Kansas City Chiefs will just win, because I also think the joke is they also have those fucking guys on their team that are in black and white. So as long as they get the most insane calls of all time, how do you fucking beat them? So the Commanders are going to get shown up by the defense, and it will just be the Chiefs win again, sadly, and have a dynasty. So that's just the way life is. But shout out, maybe Sasquatch Barkley could do something. We'll see. Let me see. What is the... Oh, there's two more. Right. More Greener says, if you could make a realistic change to a sports tournament format, what would that change be? Is there a sport you follow?
I like currently, like I just watch like UFC because it's easy to consume.
Would you change the
right?
format to that? Is there anything you would do with that?
It's weird, like the politics of how like fights are being chosen. It's like I have an issue with, it's like how the UFC like hinges on to like some horses, and some fights and matchups never happen. And like if there was a system that was created based off of like true rating, and the matchups would be determined in a way that would be, let's say, predetermined before. Like the next year, we already knew the matches that needed to happen to determine who is the best. I'd be happier. But I understand that it's like a fucking entertainment sport, right? You want to have fun fights, you want the cool fights. So it's like that's where, for me, is like the disconnect. With some fights just never seem to happen.
Yes, I will say I'm also a big UFC fan. I will say, actually, I think I already know what the change I would make. It's just the UFC never did this. What you do is, obviously the UFC, like you say, it's prize fighting. They just try to put together the fights they think will make money, whether or not they think it's the right fight or not. That's why, by the way, they will try their best not to make that Tom Aspinall, John Jones fight, because they don't want to burn John Jones on that or waste him on the fight that won't be a massive thing. They want people with giant names to fight him so he can make all the money. What I'll say is, in other things, Strikeforce did this, Pride did this. You could also do a tournament format where you make like a bracket, because the reason why that's great is it solves what you just said. Even if I'm the underdog, if I win, I get to go to the finals, and if I keep winning the fights, eventually I'll win the belt. I think that could fix it. My change would be this, even though every fan's a noobs, they're all going to tell me they wouldn't do it. I would just make the World Cup in football have a double elim bracket. I think that would be fucking fire. I actually think, by the way, spoiler, I think double elim's best in almost every sport and discipline, so I'm just a fan of it. It's why I was so glad it came to MSI, and I've told people to make MSI the best tournament. Right, last question, perfect one to end on. Light, so it's actually the person producing the show, but fuck it, I'll just say that he also put this question. It was sort of almost abuse of his power, but well, whatever. What do you expect someone called Light to do? Abuse their power? Shout out Yagami one time. Right, the question to end the show is predictions for Perk's growth as a top laner. What do you think?
I think it lies in how long the project will continue. I think if he plays, he'll be great. But if it stops for some reason and it becomes too exhausting because we're not progressing, then it stops there, you know?
The thing is, I really do think, again, I don't give a fuck that his stock's low. I really do think Perks is an incredibly unique player, like the Zhao Hus and Fakes, who have a touch of genius in how they can see the game that other people will never have. Literally, it's not as simple as, well, it rubbed off, Trick and Mithy and bro. It's years gone at this point in time. This guy just has an extra gear when he has his laning down and he has the right team and the comms work, etc. And I'll even say, in some ways, I think he's actually perfectly suited to be a top laner. He's got the insane arrogance of a top laner. He's got the give me my pick of a top laner. He's got the everyone do what I say and let me carry the game of a top. So in some ways, he's suited to it. Obviously, the question will be, if people thought his laning was an issue in the past, that is the longest lane in the game and always will be. So that will always be Gank City. So luckily, he plays at a low level. I don't really care at this. If he'll ever come back to LEC as the top laner, that would be interesting to me. I do think he's suited for it. I'm with you. I'd either have him play that role just because I think mid lane wasn't as suitable the last few years, or just do the role swap to support and be a shot caller, like we've all talked about, the high angle, basically. Right, that's it. Thank you to everyone, obviously. Shout out to everyone who listened to the ads and purchased stuff from them using our codes and got the 3 months and the percentage off and tried the products. We don't advertise anything we don't know or think is good. They're all legitimate products that we use ourselves and have tried, and that's how we give the authentic personal story. And obviously, this is just the first episode. We will be back next week after the LPL/LCK. That's how we're going to do it each week. So just keep your eye on that roughly for another episode of Summoning Insight.